I don't know if light. There we go.
Hello, welcome to FMA discussion. This is episode 118, and tonight we have the pleasure of having GM Mark Wiley here. If you're watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and we have plenty of to talk about. If you are watching, and please let me know if we had some issues before where it was just a blue screen being seen and no visual and nobody could hear. So if you can, let us know on that so I know if it's something going on or something on Be Live's end and all that. Welcome, sir. How are you? We're gonna have to
try this. Terrific. Again. Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's been so long.
Yeah. Hello again, Alvin. I'll buy now.
Okay, looks good now. So
all right.
That's great. So we're just gonna start fresh, folks.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had some issues going on there, and I'm not. Sometimes it's like it could be as small as a glitch or something. You know, it's not.
It's just replaying the same thing.
That's funny because it looks good now from.
This is what's playing right now.
I don't know. No, I know. No, this is new. You gotta get off that.
All right. I'm gonna put on my COVID mask so I don't infect anyone.
Yeah. Thank you for being so considerate.
Yes.
So, folks, anyhow, all right, we're gonna get started. So, because we have a lot to cover and all that, as far as his journey, his books, and his own system he's created, we're just gonna jump right in. So, all right, you're young. I mean, you're Philadelphia, 10 years old, and you're determined.
I'm determined. Got beat up on the way to Cub Scouts, walking home from school. Got traumatized by the bigger kid. I was always hooked on, Saturday morning or actually Saturday night kung fu movies that came on after the Friday night fight, SmackDown with the WWF wrestling. They have Shaw Brother movies, and I'd stay up till they'd start at 12:30, and then. But so my mom signed me up for Taekwondo classes, and one of the students there had done some seminars with Remy Presas and started teaching me the Sinawali drills, the 12 count and single, double Sinawali. And then I started attending Remy's training camps in Pennsylvania, in Ardmore, PA, Rosemont, PA. One of Remy's long-term students and promoters was Joe Bridenstine, who has since retired. And Joe was a mentor to me. He was my Kempo teacher. And I spent a long time in middle school, high school studying with him. And he had Remy live with him a lot when he was out in PA. Remy set up a lot of camps out in Philadelphia area. And then the other guys on the East Coast started following suit, and Remy got real big on the East Coast. So he was the main guy. I had saved up money to buy martial art magazines and get a subscription to Black Belt and other ones. I was obsessed with the content. And then I started buying books, and the first one was Dan Inosanto's Filipino martial art book. And, flipping through it and looking at all the teachers and being mesmerized, because we weren't really doing that in Taekwondo, and nothing in there looked like what we were doing in Remy Presas' style, which is kind of more clean. And those old guys are hunched over, they were old and hunched over and then kick your butt. But then the picture of Angel leaning on the table with a cigarette, just looking badass.
Iconic.
And then the story of him in Alaska, and some guys are messing about. All right, I'll be right back. Let me go out and cut down a branch and shave it up. And, it's let me go out to the car and get my gloves. I left them there, and come back in and kick some ass. And he's so short. I mean, he was up to here on me. I'm only 5'5". I'm a short guy,
So he was he even 5 feet tall?
He's probably 5'3". If I'm 5 and he's up to here, 5'2", 5'3".
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. But he was badass, man.
Yeah.
But I didn't meet and start training with him until 1985, I think. So I was training with Remy Presas, with Joe Bridenstine, and with the Modern Unis group. And then I was working at Asian World of Martial Arts, a big supply shop in Philadelphia. And a guy came in and said, "Oh, you like, Arnis?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, there's an old master in South Philly Mr. Binez. I said, Mr. Binez, what's that all about? And I was about 15. And you had to be 16 to work at Asian World because they sold weapons.
Okay.
I think 18 to actually sell them, but they let me. I knew everything about every product because I poured over their catalog for years, circling everything I wanted. Never got but wanted. And so I would just take the bus straight up into South Philly and walk up and down all different parts, waiting to look for some Filipino guy. It's mostly Italian, it's the Italian market where Rocky ran, then there's like a Cambodian section and there's a Mexican section, but there's no like Filipino section there.
Right. Okay.
So I knew I could spot them, so weeks of field research and safari in South Philadelphia. And I see this old Filipino guy walking with a case like artists use with carrying their pictures and things, their drawings, and I was like, So I said, excuse me, Manong, do you know our niece? Not feeling self-conscious at all. This, it wasn't racist or assumptive,
no generalizations.
None of that. He's like, yeah, I'm the grandmaster of our niece. I was like, oh my God, I found them. So he took me back to his house and he opens up his thing of poster boards. And on them was hundreds of photos of him cut out and pasted in order of him teaching military during World War II. So it was like, rifle with the bayonet and all these techniques for thrusting and disarming and, taking the bayonet off and attacking and lock and disarming and sword techniques and all this stuff. And he had this kind of anting tattoo right here on the side of his hand and telling me all these great stories. Leo Gahe had trained with him in Negros. And Leo had trained with his cousin is Jose Viñas, Lapu-Lapu Arnis. So Viñas and Viñas, same. It's just a letter change, but pronunciation change, but same family. They were cousins. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the style is really fantastic with disarming and locking control maneuvers and all kinds of things like that. Remy's style is very good. I found at that time that for me, Remy's style was very good on really training the basics, your 12 count, one counter for each of the 12, one disarm for each of the 12, some forms, the empty hand block trap strike. Like you really got a good overview of FMA kind of, and really train it again and again and again. And all the Sinawali's and hitting hard. And, Remy was quite good. I know back in the day, a lot of people put him down, a lot of other Arnis instructors and JKD guys would put, it's Remy, it's karate with a stick, but he's badass, man. He was strong, hit hard, and he was equally good with right and left arm, ambidextrous. And that's really rare, and when he came in at you, you had to block and move or he would just plow you over. He wasn't gentle that way, really. So, and he's from Negros too, right? So he was also a student of Viñas, and so was Gahe. And then Remy won after, from there he studied with Balintawak, right? And then one of his main teachers who he learned Shotokan from was Doc Leng Sun, Guillermo Leng Sun, who actually founded the name Modern Arnis, but Remy didn't give him credit, but everybody in the Philippines knows.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. And because he was putting karate into Arnis and karate was becoming big after World War II and the JKA, Japan Karate Association, had come in, they set up clubs. And then they had different kinds of karate. They had Shotokan and they had Goju Kai. Yamaguchi had come in and he had taught Lou Liedo. I don't know if you interviewed Lou on here. Lou Liedo of Amara Arcanis Mataguro Association. He would be a good interview.
Oh, no. Thank you for the reference.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, so Doc had actually put forth the format from the early modern Arnis, and then Remy came to the U.S. and promoted it and became like the ambassador, so to speak. But I think Christopher Ricketts in the book that his second Illustrissimo book that his students put together, Dino Flores, Florence and stuff, has a story about that directly from he was a student of Doc Leng Sun, which was also a big. Doc Leng Sun was also a big influence on Tupa Ricketts' Sagasa style, his karate, his empty hand style called Sagasa, which I write about in Filipino martial culture.
Oh, how interesting.
And Doc Lang's son was the husband of Peachy in Illustrissimo style, Grandmaster Peachy, who's pretty well known now. And I was there at her black belt testing.
Her black belt testing for
Illustrissimo and Bakbakan she was a student of Christopher Ricketts.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. So I was there when she was testing, and she was still married to Doc Lang's son before he passed.
I didn't realize that was her past husband.
I'm sorry, not Doc Lang's son.
Okay.
My brain is old. Not Doc Lang's son, a different Doc. We called him Doc, and he had the white beard. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just sorry. I was telling another story and crossed over.
Oh, no worries.
Correction. Yeah. But anyway, her husband had passed away. Yeah. But anyway, so Remy style for me was very good on training basics. And a lot of Filipino martial arts don't train basics. They just look at this technique, then that technique, then you can do this, then you can do that. And nowadays it's all show and tell. Like the instructor's like, look how good I am, and just takes the whole class impressing the students, right? And then the students are like, wow, he's Yoda, but he's a magician, but you're not really learning stuff. It's like a cult of personality. Like, I'll never be as good as him. Right. You won't, because he's not teaching you how to be as good as him.
How interesting.
Just showing off, right? So now you get a lot of that, but in like karate, a lot, Shotokan or Kempo, whatever, Goju, in Kung Fu styles, in Aikido, in all traditional martial arts have a very strong, even MMA, the foundation of basics, right?
Foundational pieces, yeah.
Fundamentals, and Remy was very good at instilling those. Angel Cabalis was very good at that. Herminio Binas was one of the best at that for me. So my second teacher was Herminio Binas, right? And he was the master of he called it his strokes. And it was the way he moved his sword. There's no wobbling of the blade. You can't just swing like a baseball bat, right?
Right.
You have to be disciplined in the stroke. And he would tell me, you must discipline. And I'd say, well, what's that mean? He said, strike the wall, but don't hit it. Okay. So he gave me a series of striking drills, measuring up to a wall. Like say the wall is, here. Let me see where I can see it on the thing. And I had to put my hand here, and not move, and do upward figure eights with the sword like an inch or half an inch away on both coming up. And if the tip went in and hit, clank. So I had to count to 100. And if the sword or the stick hit the wall, start at 1. And he'd be in the kitchen making sticky rice and adobo, and he'd hear click, and I hear him 67, 1, 2.
Oh, no.
And it was all kinds of strikes, downward X's, upward, up and down, all the different repellon, the propellers, all the different strokes. But that was so, I thought it was boring. So I'm like, show me your tricks,
Yeah.
16. But I'll tell you, that was one of the greatest influences on how I train and what I think is important. Because anybody can swing wood, right? Anybody can swing a stick. But to have the discipline of holding, okay, this is a stick. Now I'm doing blade. And then you grab the stick to disarm. Oh, you're not doing blade. You can't switch back and forth, right?
No, right.
If you're going to train stick, then train your stick techniques and then wipe your mind and say, okay, now we're going to train blade. Even if you have a stick, we're going to train blade. So you can't grab the blade and stuff like that, right? So I got very disciplined in that. So now I can strike very closely and very forcefully without actually hitting somebody, right? Or just extend a little further, and I do because of the discipline of facing the wall for hours and years,
Wow.
and having that clean stroke. There's a video on YouTube from, I don't know, 1986 or 8 or something of me and him, and I look so young and I've got hair. But anyway, I'm striking him and he's disarming and doing some strikes, and he's just so clean in his technique.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, getting back to that, like you mentioned, just for the folks who are watching, when you say it was like really boring, but now I bet you look back at that and you're so grateful and thankful what he imparted in you in those work ethics. You know what I mean?
it's very influential on my training method now. And I've developed more drills like that you can practice at home. We don't need to spend time in class doing it, But do it at home, and if you don't, that's your problem, right?
Yeah, and you'll see it. You'll see it. Yeah,
it's 100%. It's 100%.
Right.
Yeah. And if he told me, always assume that you're training with a blade, even when you're doing the stick, because then you'll never make the mistake of grabbing a blade if you're attacked because you think it's a stick. Right. So the stick, you can always level down, right? Like if you always train, imagine it. So we use aluminum blades or wooden swords, and we use sticks, right? But if you always train with the stick, always knowing that it's a blade. If you have a stick or the person has a stick, it's easier, right? Because you can do more. You can mess up, and you won't.
Yeah, the margin of error is.
But it's hard to level up. Like if you're always doing stick, and then the guy attacks you with a machete, and you grab a whatever, it's hard to then take your stick and all of a sudden try and think this is blade. I have to do it this way, because you lose that cognitive ability in the middle of the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Facing somebody for real, not a classmate,
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So, wow. And this is, you're still young. I know you, like your first exposure, you're 10 or 11, you're being exposed to Wiley, Singleton and Wiley. You're going to the camps, you meet Professor. Now, but still, you're what, 15, 16?
Yeah. I think I started training with, so Angel Cabalis, I was still in high school. I was probably 16 when I started going out to Stockton to train with him privately. Then if he went to Chicago, I'd go to Chicago to train, and I stayed at his house, and trained with him. And then one of his other, top disciples, Darren Thibon, Grandmaster Darren, he and I are tight, and he's my senior. He was already a master when I got there to train for my master's training.
Okay.
Right? So him and a bunch of guys, but Darren and I got tight, and he came out to Philadelphia, and we trained a lot more and everything. And in fact, this shirt, I stole the idea of putting the style name, Integrated Disagreement, like an Unting necklace around here, because he has it on his shirt, Stockton or what, Angel's Disciples, it says, or something. So thank you, Darren.
When you're 16, this is just amazing, because when I reflect back when I was 16, the first thing from my mind was going across the country to go train with a famous FMA screamador.
Well, I was also going to New York to see, I was doing a lot of seminars, Dan Inosanto and Paul Vunak and Chai Sarasud and Remy Presas and Ed Parker. I was just obsessed. So I would just work and use my money to train. And I wasn't really, I wrestled in school. I played soccer because, you had to play sports every season, but I wasn't hanging out after school with friends. I was taking the train into Philadelphia to train martial arts. And I was saving my money and reading the magazine. So I knew, who is Joe Louis? Oh, he's going to be in Norristown. Well, that's only a 40-minute drive. Maybe my dad can take me, And then I asked my dad, can you drop me off to go train with Joe Louis? He's the kickboxing champion. Sure. If you can get a ride the other way, So then I'd do things like that. And
amazing.
I was just totally obsessed my whole life.
So how did they feel? So your parents were okay, like, hey, I'm going to jump on a train. I'm going to the city. Hey, I'm going to the
Yeah, they were kind of hands-off parents. My father was a physician and my mom was a psychologist, but neither of them were really, they were good parents, but they weren't involved in my day-to-day. As long as my report card came back okay and I wasn't suspended and no one got pregnant in high school,
You weren't getting any of those bad phone calls.
Yeah, I had a big party when they went to Chicago one weekend for some seminar, and I had like all these people at that. And one of my friends got drunk and smashed the neighbor's BMW, and oh my God, that was the end of that for a while. But overall, as long as I was paying for some of it and I was working to do it, and they saw it was keeping me out of trouble, I had four half brothers, my second father marriage when I was 10. And, two of them got kicked out of the house. One got sent to boarding school. So I was relatively
so
good.
you
I
were
was just
doing-
running around the house in my karate gi and
Yeah.
swinging, hitting nunchucks on the fridge, and they'd smack back and hit me in the eye, and I'd be bleeding, and that was,
That was like that was
as
the worst. Of it.
dangerous as I got,
Yeah. Okay. You wouldn't
riding
be
my dirt
kicked
bike
out
in the
or
backyard.
So then, all right. So your first, okay. So you're flying out to Stockton.
Yeah.
Around 16.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Crazy.
I can't think of anybody doing that as a teenager. I'm sure you had to be probably the first and only one, I'm guessing. So then how long did this go? Like how much time did you spend with him, and what did you really like about him in the system?
Oh, well, first thing is I had exposure to the Serrata system before I met him through a teacher named Alan McLucky, who was pretty big on doing seminars in the Midwest and East Coast in the late 80s to the mid 90s. And then he kind of quieted down. But he was a student originally of, I think, Mikey Nye, and then he went with Jimmy DeCosa. And then I lived with Fred Degerberg for a while in Chicago, and I worked at the Degerberg Academy, and he had Angel in. And then that's when I got introduced to Angel. And that was I graduated high school, and I flew out to Chicago, and I moved in with Fred.
So the moment you graduated that summer, you were there.
Because in 2 years before, 2 years before graduation, I'd gone out saved up my money for summer camp and did 2 weeks at the Great Smoky Mountain Camp in South Carolina, which was Dagerberg, Inosano, Tim Tackett.
It was the big
Rascala Casillas, Cliff Stewart. I mean, there's everyone was there.
I was
just like within my tent and like training.
I couldn't even imagine. And at the age that you were at, living around living legends.
And I was just like, everybody I see in these magazines, I want to go meet.
I know.
And I had seen an article, I think it was Black Belt or Inside Kung Fu. Somebody did an article on Fred Degerberg's Academy. And there was like all these teachers in there all the time. And I thought they all just came in and taught. I didn't realize it was seminars. He was like one of the first big seminar promoters.
When I
met him at the Smoky Mountain Camp, I was like, Fred, you're my hero. You have all these masters coming in. And he took me under his wing, and we got very close. And then he invited me to come move out as soon as I graduated high school, and I did. And, Ron Balicki and I became friends. This is before he became an apprentice with Dan. And so, long way back.
Wow.
And then I started going out to see Angel, and I would just save my money and fly out. He'd get me at the airport in his big car. And it's the old kind where they had the fabric on the roofs, the roof of the car. And
I know you're talking about the line.
The liner or whatever. You have to glue it up and every time I'd see him, them liners falling again. Yeah. I'm like, it's the same every time.
It's falling again. It just was never put back.
It's just never fixed. Yeah. And then we go to this place to go get ice cream or something, and I had a red T-shirt on or whatever color, and he's like, I was like, Manong, why are these guys looking at me like they're gonna kill me? Oh, they're the Crips. You wear their color. I was like, you're gonna tell me before we leave the house?
Oh my gosh! Here you are from East Coast, and
I don't know anything. I'm young, 16, 17, 18, 22, whatever, up till, and I just stay there, and we get up in the morning and train. And the thing that that stuck with me with him was we spent the good part of I don't know. It feels like an hour. It could have been 3 hours. I don't remember now. A good part of a day practicing one block against angle 6 because it wasn't perfect. And he made me do it slow. Like I could do it fast, but he made me do it slow. And he said, if you can't, anybody can move fast, but it doesn't mean you're doing it right. And if you could do it slow, like if his stick is coming in, where's the camera? This slow, and I can't speed up and catch it. Like it's got to be the same. We have to time this one thing.
Same. Okay.
And the slower you can do it means the better you can track their rate of motion and their position, right? What I call their place in time and space, right? Their timing and their space movement, right? So that was my first idea of thinking about that. He didn't say it like that, but that's how I started thinking about time and space, or and range control and range management. which is a big thing in integrated eskrima, which people just talk about generally, but they don't really train it, Oh, we're in medium range. Okay, this is long range, but why are you doing close range techniques in long range and long range techniques in close range? You guys have it all mixed up because mostly people are seminar learned, But anyway, so Angel was it was a inside block against angle 6, which seems so simple and took a long time. And then when I got it, to this day, I never get it wrong. And it's just him on that and Professor Binias on this wall striking. It teaches you discipline, right? In your practice, that there are details here. Like he could have picked inside block on angle 1, like he could have picked anything, right? But
yeah.
And you think like that same kind of discipline, if you want to be good, has to be there. And Angel was very good, and Binias was very good, and Tatan, oh my God, he's like,
we're definitely getting him.
Yoda to the Jedis, But those things stuck with me. Remy's insistence on training the basics hard and having a good overview. Binias's insistence on always using it as a blade reference and training the stroke quality and the precision in your wrist to hold it at the correct angle all the time. And then Angel's insistence on always, there was 3 things with him, but I took one out of my own training. But the one was the precision of the technique. The second one was that more than anyone else that I trained with, he was a master of holding his range. So a lot of people like to say that Serrata Eskrima is a close range system, but it's medium range. By the range measure proportionality of Filipino martial arts, it's a medium range system, not a close. You're close and you have a shorter weapon, but you're still in medium range, right? So, and many of the techniques are actually what you might think of as largamana because they're attacking the hand and wrist, right? Which aren't technically close range techniques, Okay. So, but he was a master. So if you look at, there's a real old video from the 70s of him and Dentoy Revelar doing lock and block on YouTube. Okay. And Angel is just boom, 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 holding his range. And it's like he can't be pushed out of his range. Dentoy's not moving in. He's not falling out. He's not moving away. He's completely controlling the situation. And I just study that again and again and again and again and again. Wow, range control, footwork to control the range. Okay, this is important, And then a different level of that came with Tatan for me. And then the other thing was the reflex control in the Serrata style. A lot of it is fast and reflexive. Because you have a shorter stick, you've got to move fast and more, and he was very good at that with lock and block and this thing called picking or feinting strikes and things like that. But I found later that timing and position for me is more important and more applicable than reflex control, than being fast and reflexive. So timing and position beats speed and reflexes. So if you're a master of timing and you're a master of where your position is, left to right and front to back. So gait is left to right and range is front to back. Right. And if you can master that, that's better for me, I think, than mastering speed and reflexes. Because if you're in the wrong range, wrong gait, it doesn't matter how fast you are, right? So
no, I've always appreciated about how you would go inside gate, outside gate.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've always
outside gate.
Yeah, I've always admired that, how you differentiate that with in ranges, like how inside and outside gate can still keep you in middle range, but by different footwork, it can also put you in close. So I was always fascinated by that, how you express that and the wording you chose. Yeah. Why did they use shorts? So when I say short, 24 inches, am I correct?
24. And then some of the students went down to 18 to be faster, but they don't realize you lose the power and there's no mass there or weight.
There's no width.
But 24. It's because, so Tatang Ilustrisimo was working as security on the Tondo Piers and Tondo Manila, right? And he was, the night guardsman. He hired on his friend Felicissimo Dizon to work with him. Yeah. Dizon had his own style, but it's actually Serrata is very close to Illustrissimo and to Villabrea style. But Villabrea was the nephew of Tatan.
Right, through marriage.
Tatan's nephew, right?
Yeah.
So those three styles have more so. Villabrea and Serrata have more in common than Illustrissimo and Serrata, right? They're just in a different range and have a different footwork, but the techniques are almost identical, the basic techniques, right? Just the Villabrea extenuates and use chicken stepping and wider motion for their showing and their demo, where the Serrata is shorter, but really it's almost the same counters, right? Right. So Disson was there with Illustrissimo and the peers, and they were night watchmen, you know.
Could you imagine those two for night watchmen?
Yeah, night. I don't know. They had to guard the shipments from getting stolen, you know, at the shipping pier. So Disson used a billy club, you know, like a short and heavy 24-inch handled billy club, and he had a dagger, right? And Tatan had this kind of long flat garrote that he just walked around holding, you know. And so Disson trained and really got that kind of short stick billy club and knife, which is why Serrata doesn't really have two sticks. You know, there's some video of Angel doing Sinawali or Redonda kind of not correctly on the old Koinonia production videos. But really it's single stick, empty hand and knife, empty hand against knife, right? But there's not a broad system, because when he learned from Disson, he trained 5 years and he learned the protective system from Tondo. So he got the Serrata, but not the Abierta. So a lot of guys think it's a half a style, you know, although there are some Abierta, where Illustrissimo's got the Abierta and the Serrata guard, you know, and the techniques thereof. And Serrata uses the male triangle stepping and a front side step, a front and turn. We call it anyway, my brain. Pagiwas in Illustrissimo. But he doesn't use the reverse triangle, and Illustrissimo uses that, and the tatlong bao, or the alternate stepping. So he didn't have that in his system. So it's super tight. It's super wound tight. It's trained super tight. The training progression is tight. Like everything about it is like tight rubber band ball, you know. But that's what it is. There's none of this other kind of stuff. You know, you don't have really the long range. He developed that later in Stockton to help beat the Bahalanaga guys. You know, Leo Hironin.
They were at war.
They were enemies for a while, so he's going to develop Serrata to beat the Largamano. And so we started evolving, and then he evolved the empty hand stuff in the United States in Stockton, and things like that. But his 5 years with Disson were with the short stick, you know, because he was on the docks learning.
Because, you know, when I hear, and then again, I mean, I'm not saying this is true. You know, we're all exposed to hearing different things. Like I heard, like the system over there was based on the 24-inch lead pipe, so to speak. And then when it came over here and all that, is there any truth to that? Or?
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't keep up on that stuff now.
Yeah.
Because like I got it back from the source for me way back.
Yeah, so why are you going to bother hearing other stuff? Right.
So all the news stories coming up, it doesn't really.
Yeah, no, understood.
Yeah, it could be true, but I don't have the fascination anymore to dive into it.
Yeah. It's just like, again, you know, when you're exposed to people telling you different things when they're trying to share you what the system originated from and what have you and all that. So, all right, so you're staying that summer there. And so did you, like, now this is just a fall. I mean, did you go to college or did you
Okay.
I
did it. I skipped a year before I went to college.
Okay, to be your okay.
So or a year and a half. I took off a year and a half. I was at Dagerberg's for most of a year. And then I came back. I didn't make enough money to, you know, live on my own, you know, at that age. Yeah. And then I worked for a couple of months, and then I went to college. I did too much college. So, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, 2 doctorate degrees.
Right.
Master's degree. Yeah, way too much. But I was thirsty for information and knowledge, So majoring in anthropology, understanding the culture and the ethnography of weapons and language and medicine and folklore, all that was helped me dig into the Filipino martial culture.
Yeah. No,
which I wrote as my thesis in college. Was my graduating parts of it were my graduating thesis.
Okay.
And I was just like headed to the Philippines to the first time I went with Grandmaster Ray Galang and with the Bakbakan group, and they introduced
me. I didn't know that. What year?
93, maybe.
So how old are you? So your first trip, how old are you?
I was 24.
So how did that, like, how did you coordinate that? I mean, you're during
Well, Ray lived in New Jersey. I lived
in Lodi, right? Lodi.
In Lodi, New Jersey. Yep.
Yeah.
And we were buddies, we hung out a lot. We promoted a lot. We put together my newsletter, Tambuli, his newsletter, Phoenix, for Bakbakan, and Edgar's Vortex newsletter. We worked on those three together to produce them all. And we'd sit at his house on weekends and do all three newsletters. People don't know I was involved in Edgar's stuff, his stuff.
Count me, yeah. I didn't know you. Wow, okay.
Yeah. And he helped me with some terminology in my Serrata book. And then, Edgar and I had decided we should promote the arts in America in the same way, right? So let's all use Tagalog because it's a national language. And of course, I didn't speak it, right? But I got all the terminology from them along the way because, this guy's Visayan, he's Ilocano, all the terms are all over the place, for stuff. And so when my Serrata book came out and I had Tagalog terms next to, Sangasa Luub and, Inside Block and all these things, oh my God, all the Serrata guys, all of a sudden I'm the Antichrist because Angel was Visayan and how come I didn't put it in Visayan?
And
it's like, this is the national language and it's in parentheses. It still says Angle 1, and he taught in English, but we're trying, me, Edgar and Ray, we're trying to set up a standard
universal
publishing, and we're trying to help pull these things that are just kind of scattered together. And it's just like looking for any excuse to hate me, those guys at the time, So like, a bunch of guys like, we're going to kill him. Everything is wrong. He thinks he's the Grand Master. I didn't say that. Angel asked me to write the books. I didn't even know how to write, and whatever. But now most people have come around,
Yeah. It's amazing what time does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then, okay. So you get you're coordinating with Ray, and he brings you over to 94.
Yeah, he said he's going over and he's going to see, we had been talking about Tatang and Tupper and Tony Diego, Yuli Romo and Doc Ling Sung and all these guys so much over like a year or two working on all this content, and we're shooting videos and all kind of stuff. And I've just felt like I knew him already, all the guys, and he's like, well, I'm going over, we're going to do some training in this. Do you want to come? And I was like, okay, $1,400 for the airfare, and this is for the training, and this is for, and then where am I going to get all that money? And man, I just worked hard. And then my girlfriend's mother lent me $700 on top of it. And I got enough to go. And and we went over, and it was just an amazing.
How long?
That first trip was amazing.
How long was the trip?
2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. So now, okay, so now is your first trip. You're a different country, a country that obviously you're hearing a lot about because you love the arts. But now, more importantly, you're meeting about to meet legends. Legends. Yeah. So you meet these guys. Like, what's going on?
I got there, and that I don't know if you've been there, but the flight is forever from the East Coast.
On the bucket list, I gotta.
Yeah, but it's like with all the stopovers, it's probably 30 hours door to door from the East Coast because you got to stop in fuel and then stop in LA or Alaska, or something, then stop in Japan, and then you got to hit the Philippines. And then it's like 4 a.m. for you. You haven't slept, and it's midnight there or 10 there. And then by the time you get from the airport through all the stuff and whatever, and then we get to Tupper Ricketts' house, and all the guys are there. All the living room furniture is gone, just a big open room. And all the guys are there who are now known in Bakbakan, Duran Sordo, and Miguel Zubiri and a bunch of guys. Miggs is now a senator.
Right.
So all those guys were there. Tupper, Tony Giego, Alex Coe, who became my kung fu teacher, and big brother for the last forever. I walk in, they're like, "Okay, Mark, sparring." I was like, I didn't even put down my luggage. Can a brother pee?
Oh my God. Burton said the same thing. He gets in, they bring him to the old gym.
And it's time to spar.
And Burton's just like, okay.
Yeah. So you get the helmet and you get a padded stick or a regular stick and a hand guard or whatever. And it's like one guy after like 10 rounds. You got to go 10 rounds. A new guy each round. And this is Bak Bakan's rules to get accepted in. And if you give up, you're not in. It doesn't matter if you lose, but you don't know that at the time.
Yeah, you just show heart.
You just had to show heart. Yeah. And I don't know, are these guys like masters have they been training since they were 1? Did they just get out of prison for knifing 10 guys? I don't know that.
And here comes an American.
And then you're like, if you actually beat up a guy, do the other guys jump you? Like, I don't know anything. It's just fresh off the plane, But we had a good time. I had bruises and lacerations all over my ribs and my thighs and my forearm. And I was like, okay, all Illustrissimo guys, all tough Bak Bakan guys. And I realized I got some stuff to learn here. And
they're tough. I heard that was a tough group, man, back then.
Tough group.
Known for banging. I heard that was tough.
And then, we all became good friends. And I ended up married my first wife in the Philippines, and they were all at my wedding, and engaged as parts of the wedding. And so forth. It was great having a bunch of grandmasters at the wedding.
I can only imagine. So, all right. So that's your first. So you didn't get jumped. I
didn't get jumped.
You just had 10
but I got to interview everybody and go train.
But so you meet GM Tatang. I mean, like what? And obviously from that meeting, you became a student. You were sold.
Are you kidding? For me, I never had an ego in martial arts about like I'm the best, right? Like Angel asked me to write his books, and I didn't know how to write, and I was in high school and I hadn't written anything, and I get D's in English. But that moment he asked me changed my entire life, right? I mean, all I've done is write since then, And I couldn't write the book. I couldn't get it published, so I started taking out a chapter, like an article, and I'd send it to Black Belt Magazine. And then the editor at the time, Jim Coleman, this is 1989 or 90, 89, I think. And he said, you know what? I'd love to do an article on Angel Cabalis. This one just isn't the one. It's not well written. And then I'd go to the library. I was in community college, 89, I guess. And between classes, I read every book they had on publishing. Poetry, travel books, fiction, nonfiction. And then they had books on editing and how to do book binding and how to market books. Like, I just wanted to read everything. And then I rewrote the book and I sent it off. 14 publishers turned me down. I kept going. Black Belt Magazine picked up 2 articles in 1990, my first 2 articles. They were on Serrata, one on Angel's life and one on reflex control or coordination. And then Tuttle Publishing picked up the book, and that just changed everything for me from there. Yeah. But in the Philippines, when I got there, that book was already published, and I was working on the martial culture book. And Bob Jocano, Professor Jocano's father, F. Lando Jocano, who was a massive influence on Philippine anthropology, archaeology, and culture.
Yeah, his father, right.
Was a mentor to me. I bring him notes. We talk about it, and Bob we talk there, and we meet at the university, and he'd give me reading materials and say, well, this isn't true. This whole idea of 3 migrations of Malays to the Philippines, we now know is not true because it was Filipino, ethno-linguistic Filipino groups here before the Malays arrived, and they stayed in their areas, but most of the indigenous Filipinos are not Malay by culture or by bloodline. So, he spent a lot of time correcting the Philippine ethnography and the ethnohistory, right? So he was very instrumental on me. So when I was writing and I was quoting a lot of his work and his influence, people say, that's not true because this guy said this and this. Yeah, but that's all been disproven. That's just in the popular martial art magazine or in the book by, Black Belt Magazine's book on our niece or something, right? It's not actually the updated stuff from the Philippines,
So we're gonna get to it. Just to go back, because some of the questions everybody wants to hear about.
What Tatang?
You're before the legend. Like, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, first, we had set up. So I got beat up that night. I had a lot of bruises. The next morning we get up, and they were very kind, giving me some breakfast and instant coffee, which I hate. So bitter, and it's hot as balls out there, and there's no air conditioning anyway. But anyway, very hospitable. I appreciate it. And then Tatang walks in, and me and Ray are eating in front of the TV watching. Somebody had made bootlegs of somebody's instructional videos, and they were copying them for Tupper on the TV. Tatang walks in, and Ray goes, Tang, and Manopo, right? So I take his hand, Manopo, and Tatang goes, bah! And he smacks me in the head with the back of his hand. I've got his hand, and he goes, boom. And it's just like my head was like, wow. But he didn't do it to Ray. So I'm like, So we're talking, and I said, I'm a student of Angel Cabalis, and he went, oh, okay. And blah, blah, blah. And then Ray said, we had 2 padded sticks, and Ray gave us one each. And he said, Tang, spar with Mark. Okay.
Oh, no.
And we go to the other little side room, and there's like a overhead lighting, with some kind of plexiglass or plastic over it. So the light's all shining down. And I'm like, and I'm doing like all this. I'm thinking I'm the man. I'm showing this guy who's boss. Yeah. Yeah. So meanwhile, this is why for me, speed and reflexes don't beat position and timing, because I was faster than him. My reflexes were super quick. I was 24.
You're 24.
Super Serrata and Beanius and Modern Arnis. And I was like, and Tatang, Pak, hit me. Pone, hit me. Pak, hit me. And he's not even like, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh man, something's going on. Okay, I'm going to try this technique, and he's like, and I'm like, what is going on? And then Ray's laughing in the other room, and he's videotaping it. And in the video, he's laughing, it's shaking, And then he puts on the video for us to watch. And I see that Tatang is looking at the TV, what they're filming, while he's hitting me.
This is the story. Okay, from your interview. That's where this occurred.
He's watching the television in the other, it's 8 feet away. There's a little step down, And he's watching it, and I'm like, I'm gonna go get you, bro. And he's just boom, pack.
So he's using his peripheral. He's basically using his peripheral
And I thought, okay, it's one thing to hit me when you're looking at me without trying. And it's another to not even be looking at me. And I thought, this is Yoda. And I just thought that day, I'm throwing everything else out that I learned to empty my mind, and I need to learn this system. And that's what I did. I was like, this is it. And when I interviewed him for the book, martial culture book, this one I did that first trip I did.
Yeah.
10 of those interviews that are in the book, And I said, excuse me, Tatang, how did you hit me when you weren't looking? He said, I can't see you anyway. I have too many cataracts. And I was like, okay, so that makes me even worse. Like, that's supposed to make me feel better.
Because this is 94, right?
So I said, yeah, he was old. He was like 89.
So he was 90. He was already 90, like 93.
But he said, I can't really see, but I see different shadows, right?
Shadows. Light. That's what I heard.
I see light and a figure, and then like dark. And because the light was overhead, everything was a shadow. So he said, hold on, let me tighten my bottle. He said, when your stick's coming on angle 1 under the light, this is shadowed. So I know just to hit the light spots. And all I did was aim for the light spots.
Isn't that incredible? How he adapted? Wow.
Yeah. And I thought there was no blocking, no passing, no quick moves. I mean, there was a little,
recta, right? Recta.
Yeah, recta. Yeah, so recta, florete, a couple things like that. Tumbada. But he wasn't like, pow, pow, ta-da,
Yeah, no, he wasn't deflecting and coming
easy
back to you. I mean, he's just...
and impressive. And I thought, that's it, So every morning I do a couple hours of Illustrissimo training with Tupper Ricketts and Tony Diego and Ray. Ray and I were training with them. And then I go off and do interviews, go see Ben Lima and Jose Mina and Jerson Tortal and Tatang and whoever else. 1,000 other people, a bunch of people who didn't even make it in the book. Also the Hapkido Philippines and Aikido Philippines, and going to see Professor Hokano, and then training in Gocho Kung Fu with Alex Ko, and spent a lot of time with him. After Tatang died, I would just fly to see Alex Ko, and then Alex would set up more interviews because he owned a martial arts supply store, Squadron Shop, and all the guys would get their equipment from him. Or they'd stop into his shop in Binondo, the Chinatown, and get some merienda money, some snack money. Tatang would come in, or another guy would come in, or another kung fu teacher would come in, and I'd be with him, and I'd conduct interviews there. He'd call everybody, say, "Mark is here. What time do you want to come?" Romy Macapagal would come by. We'd have something to eat. I interview him. Jose Mina would stop by, interview him, and eat, and go train with him in the Chinese garden the next day when he had his class, and it kind of went like that. It was mind-blowing. And the tens of thousands of photos I have unpublished and the hours and hours of video I have of all of these conversations.
I can only imagine. I mean,
yeah,
it's
huge.
Going back to that first trip. I'm sorry, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, going back to that first trip, I know you're training and all that. So did you, this is a two-part question. The first part, I know you got a lot of time in, as much as humanly possible while you're there in the KI. Did you go back after that, to train KI furthermore with any of them? And the second part, I didn't realize on your first trip there that you were actually, that was the pre-works of your book. I didn't.
Yeah. I started that book because my thesis I went to Drexel University in Philadelphia for my undergraduate. And we had to have a graduate thesis, right? And my major was applied sociology, and my minor was medical anthropology. I was into all this kind of folk healing, things. And I said, okay, for my thesis, I'm going to write 20 pages or 30 pages on the ethos of Filipino martial culture. I'm just going to, and then the first thing I decided was, I'm going to track down the difference between Kali, Eskrima, and Arnis. And when I'm in the Philippines, I'm going to figure it out. And no one knew what the hell Kali was. Nobody. You go there and you're like, Kali, and they're like, what's that? And then you show that and they go, oh, California. Okay. It's okay. Just let me clarify actually what it is now is that. So in the 80s, you see Paquita Tercia Arnis ads in the magazines and seminars. And then it became Paquita Tercia Kali. And then 100%. It became Inasano Kali. Villabrea system up until the 80s, he gave certificates that said Villabrea Eskrima. And then they turned to Kali later, right? And then Sayok was Arnis, became Kali later. So it's a term that a group of instructors adopted to separate themselves from certain other FMA guys who uses the word Arnis and Eskrima. So that's okay. You can pick whatever term you want. And the term comes from Kamut Lihuk, according to Villabrea, meaning hand movement, right?
Correct.
So, Kali is that. And then some people just start interpolating and extrapolating. Well, Kali is the goddess of war from India. Well, that has nothing to do with the Philippines. There's no Indian temples in the Philippines. There's no Hindu religion in the Philippines. So just knock it off, right? Or Kali means crack in this language in the Philippines. Okay. But so to say that your art is Kali and that's what you want to call your FMA, that's okay. Because they want to distinguish their group because there were some problems between the LA people and the Stockton, who was Eskrima. So they said, we'll call ourselves Kali, you call yourselves Eskrima, and whatever. And then every seminar guy all through the 80s and 90s just started saying Kali Eskrima Arnis. But thankfully now we just say FMA and we don't have to worry about it. But so I would say, okay, so Kali is a term for a certain group of guys with a certain perspective, and Eskrima and Arnis. Eskrima is really a Cebuano or Central Filipino term, and Arnis is a Luzon term.
The Luzon upper, okay.
Yeah, but the styles are very similar, you know. It's still FMA, they just have a different term. But what I take, I don't know what the word is, not offense, but because I'm not offended, but I take, the problem is when the stories were coming out by certain people here in the U.S. saying Kali is the mother art of the Philippines, and all arts come from Kali. And I talked about that in the martial culture book briefly in one of the chapters, and that started a firestorm of hate mail and death threats for 15 years.
Oh my gosh! Because
the Blind Princess story is fake, you know, the whole thing of Kali, and then you know Villabria fought and became the Grandmaster of Kali. I have a copy of his certificate from that day. It says Eskrima, you know. You know, I have Gahe's master certificate, a copy. It says Arnis. You know, I know who his teachers are. They're all Arnis guys, right? Yeah. So, but okay, you want to call your art Kali now? That's okay. There's no problem with Bikini Tertia Kali or Inasanto Kali or Sayok Kali. Kali is their name for FMA, and that's okay.
Right.
But some teachers were saying a false narrative to make their art look deeper.
No, more unique, prestigious. Yeah.
And it's baloney because there's not even a mother language for the Philippines or
a mother
art or a mother song, right? There can't be a mother single martial art in an island chain that was just wrapped up by, you know, frigging Magellan and named in half of Prince Philip and say, you guys all with different languages and bloodlines are now called the Philippines. And it's interesting that everything is so different, but you have one martial art. You know, I mean, come on.
No, I know. You know, like I was telling somebody, and I gotta tell you, and I tell my students, I tell people this. I admit it. You know, I bought a lot of that Kool-Aid. I was originally a sound guy. I mean, I bought the Kool-Aid. I'm not gonna go into a thing, get off point here, but. I'm guilty. I mean, I bought it until
I got cases of Kool-Aid still. You know, we all want to believe our creation myths, right? Our origin myths, martial arts, religion, the origin of our family line, whatever. You know, I'm from the Irish group, from the Celtic lands of, whatever. You know, the history of our favorite chocolate bar goes back to 1710. You know, whatever.
It goes back to 1650.
Yeah, right. I mean. That's part of the human condition of us finding out who we are and where our place is in the universe, in the world of history of the planet. So I understand that now, So to say that, for example, and you were talking about earlier at the start, we talked about integrated Eskrima. Just a little aside here. Some people want to train with me, and then they say, well, after I get your basics, can you just train me in Serrata? Or can you just train me in Illustrissimo? And I said, I could, but I don't want to. And they said, well, I want to be part of that lineage. So it's like, they don't want to be a part of the white guys thing. They want me to, after I do what you want me to do for a little bit, can I get into their lineage? And it's like, wow, so I just say, no, there's plenty of other teachers and I can recommend you some in those arts. And because they want to be a part of something for their branding, right? Like I'm the lineage I'm in the line for Illustrissimo for, Iceland, whatever. So they need to attack on themselves for importance. And for me, that's all BS because these are supposed to be arts for self-defense, for self-knowledge and understanding, for discipline, spiritual growth, if that's where you want, or coming to know yourself, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of things there, but branding is not, what I care about. So, people used to accuse me of just promoting myself in all my books and articles. And I say, up until never have I written never in 300 FMA articles have I written about myself. And in 10 or whatever Filipino martial art books, I've never written about myself or my style ever. I was always promoting Angel Cabalis and all the masters in that book, right? And then in the Arnis Reflections, History and Culture, Filipino fighting arts, 25 different styles and masters. I'm not in the book, right?
Yeah.
Never promoted myself. While everybody else is off branding, we're all within the same style, but I'm this group of that style, and I'm this group of that style.
I know, what lineage. I mean, geez, it's just like, I know. And folks here,
thank you, Bram Frank. Elric Jundis, nice to see you.
Folks, I'm sure the majority watching this have seen or probably even have this, but this book right here, without any exaggeration, is what changed like my martial art career to what it is now, to me doing this show. It was due to this book. If it were not for this book, I would not be doing this show. This is what got me so immersed into FMA and all that, and I wanted to seek out everybody. And I thought it was just, even back then without knowing you, I just thought it was terrific. I thought it was the most fascinating thing I ever got my hands on, and not just from the cultural and and all that, but just like where you just alluded to, where each master, like you really took the time and gave them their due. And I now you've had to give them business. I mean, there's people from the West that have to, right? Yeah,
there's a couple of things there. One is on the cover of the book, there's Lapu Lapu, right?
Yes.
An artist on the streets of Manila drew that for me for $2 with a pencil, and then we colored it in for the cover. And I have the original pencil drawing hanging up in my gym. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I said I got 3 pictures from him. I got that one, and I got a cockfighter and another one, and he just sat there drawing them real quick with charcoal, a pencil and charcoal.
Amazing.
Crazy. But what happened from that book is all of a sudden the world knew about Katang Illustrissimo. Nobody nobody knew who he was.
That's how I knew about it.
No one knew about, outside of in the Philippines, everybody knows Katang, everybody knows Ben Lima, right? Outside the Philippines, nobody knew Lightning Scientific, at least not in the United States, Nobody knew any of those styles, most of those styles, right? Yeah. Remy asked me, how come you didn't put me in the book? I said, well, there's a picture and I talk about you. He said, why don't I have my own chapter? I said, well, 2 reasons. One is you have tons of publicity already. And the publisher cut the book down by 1/3. So the publisher said it was going to cost too much to print it at 400 pages. So they reduced it, right? So some of the masters got taken out and a whole bunch of information. But I got to put that information in another book called Arnis Reflections on the History and Development of Filipino Arts. And I said, everybody knows you, but nobody here knows Katang. They know Jose Paris, right? They don't know Ben Lima. They don't know Jose Mina. They don't know, all these guys, right? And Herminio Binas and et cetera, who are in the book. And I really wanted to give them. And the other thing is that's important in that book is when you read the history part, the actual history and anthropology, and then you hear the life stories of the teachers and how they came up, they trained, you need to compare what they say against the actual history, because not everything the teachers say is true. But I didn't feel it was my place to correct them. I wanted everybody to tell their own story.
Yeah.
And here's the actual historical fact, and here's their creation story, and if it didn't jive, it didn't jive, and if it did, it did. But at least the people who care to take the time to read the book and not just look at the pictures or read one teacher can see those things. But I don't feel like it's a comment on.
And you know what? Leave it to the audience and the readers to draw their own conclusion.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's like you know.
Yeah, and so like for me now, then I really cared, but now I don't care.
I wouldn't care.
Like Binas said, nobody see, and also there's a language barrier because Binas always said, I'm self-taught, nobody taught me. I learned my techniques in a dream. Okay, but I know your cousin Jose Binas taught you, and he's like, yeah, but he didn't teach me my style, right? Right. So it's a matter of the language barrier of how they're translating to English. To say that while I may have studied with other teachers, the style that I do, nobody taught me. I developed these techniques and this, and Nene Tortal, Leo's uncle, his uncle, Jerson Tortal, always said to me, I keep improving my technology. my art keeps improving because the technology I use, meaning the way he structures it, evolves because his mind keeps active. So we can say, his style in Leo Gahe is like these days, right?
Yeah.
Gahe is a genius. His style is like, the techniques are quite advanced for their time, and they're from the same family, but now Tortal and Gahe, their styles are here and here because they keep creating and developing off of their family and off of the of that style, from Negros. So each master, of course, has a style. Like each painter will have a style. Each basketball player will have a style. But you start out with the basics. You start out with a system somewhere, and then you create. But the most problem I find is that the teachers don't know how to teach and develop students because they didn't really go to school back then. All those timers had to work. So they didn't learn things like how to structure arguments and how to think about material, right? And they didn't learn piano lessons to say like, we have scales and then a version of the scale, and then from there you get a chord and you get another chord and you can break up the chord and now you have a song. Like they didn't learn these kind of step-by-step things, so they just by example, right? So Remy really codified it, which I appreciated. Here's angle one. Here's the technique for angle one. Here's a disarm for angle one. Here's angle two. For angle two. Here's a disarm for angle two. So I really appreciated that. Angel had his own tightened, but most of them, like Ben Luna Lima, we'd be training at Marikina Sports Center. A couple times Bacho Kano was there, and one John Escudero was there. He was quite young. He's like, okay, I'll teach you the 5 techniques for this one. Here's number 1. Here's 2, 3, 4, 5. And I try and remember them. And I'm like, what's first is? And I get a different set of 5. And then I do it. And it's like, because it's spontaneous, which you need for fighting. But you got to write that shit down and remember the lesson.
Students where spontaneity is not going to be there. Right. I totally gotcha. Yeah. Just going back to that book.
Without having the basics. So yeah.
No. I totally get what you're saying. It's absolutely true. It's just like just because you're pulling stuff off spontaneity and on reflexive doesn't mean the student is going to learn that way or can learn that way without any basic structure. So I definitely get what you're saying with the way Remy did it, I got a question here. This is fascinating, by the way, but and this is from Julius, of all the people that you have, trained with, one-on-one instructors, all that, it doesn't have to be just one pick out, but I guess, 1 through 3, like who would you like to train if you had the opportunity and could do it? Who would you like to train again with?
Oh, illustration.
Man, no argument. Gosh.
So for me, and I mean no disrespect at all for anybody.
No. I don't think anybody would take
for me, the most skilled teachers I trained with we could call them Jedis. The Jedis were Angel Cabalis, Herminio Binas, Remy Presas was a Jedi. Juni Cañete is a Jedi. All these people. And Illustration was Yoda. He was there. He was just above them, and we have video of, Ben Lima coming up behind Illustrissimo with a stick, just walking up to him, and Illustrissimo just turns and disarms him, and like it's about to, like, don't sneak up on me, motherfucker, and it's like, wow, like, and they all know, they're like, yeah, I can beat anyone. Well, not Tatang, but
So there's unspoken rules.
They all tell me they're undefeated in the interviews, and I said, that's amazing. You're all undefeated in your death matches, and they're all still alive. Yeah. And it's like, well, I'm undefeated in my fights, but I'm not going to fight Tatang, because there was no support for him. There was no branding for him. It was the students that branded it, right? Not him.
Yeah.
He didn't give a crap, right?
Right.
He didn't give a crap. So we'd be having. I go to his place in Tondo, and we pick him up, and then we go to Luneta Park, Rizal Park, called Luneta, and we train real early in the morning before it's too hot, right? And after training, we get some kanji, and just eat some things next to the park. There's a hotel and eat. And then like he gave me he wrote out some oraciones for me, these prayers, right? And you can get them in books and antings. I bought a whole bunch on the street, but they're not like effective or powerful unless they're blessed and the prayer and they're given to you, right? Otherwise they're just a trinket, right? So Tatang wrote out my oraciones. I have the paper and he's got my anting and he's blessing it. And he's got like, 2 teeth and he's eating and the kanji and the spit's flying out and it's like getting onto my plate and on my drink. And I'm just like, oh, and then, but I'm like, you know what? It's okay because I'm going to get some really good shit from here, Yeah. And then he gives me the paper. And the first one on there is what to say when a rabid dog is running toward you to make it turn around. And I thought, that's exactly what I need in Philadelphia, is to have the oracion for the rabid dog coming at me. There was other ones like how to not get disarmed and how to make your opponent lose their courage. More useful things. But the first one was about the dog. And then like I wasn't thirsty anymore or hungry, And then you give him some money for, as a token for the day. And like his girlfriends take it and fight over it. And it was hilarious. He always had women,
Man, I just can't imagine.
He was amazing, amazing guy. The training was crazy. He'd show me defenses against his angles. And this is where I learned about the real way. I don't want to say the real way. I don't want to offend anybody. This is where I learned about how can I say it? Every technique has a gait and range it works in. Okay. Some techniques work in more than one range, but you have to change your footwork. Different lead, different step, different gait or range. Okay. And this is the basics of integrated eskrima. I start with this premise, okay, rather than telling you later, right? And therefore, not every technique works in every range, right? So that was a big new. He didn't talk like that, So
I'm getting what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what happened was he says, I give him angle 1 and he does pluma, right? If you've seen pluma, it's like the quilt pen.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
It rotates over, right? Cabalis has shoulder block, which is a slow motion version of pluma because you come in, you roll, you pull back, you hit. But if you did it fast, it's pluma. But Cabalis,
if you would make it one motion.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Cabalis teaches it step by step. Illustrismo does the full roll, but it's the same technique, but the mechanic is different, right? So you can see though that there. Anyway, so he did pluma on angle 1. So I'm practicing with a friend of mine from England, Simon Laley was there, and he was feeding me, and I'm doing it, and Tatang's just like, to me that's what he looked like. Like, how much longer did I watch this fool? And I said, Tang, pretty good, huh? You don't do what I tell you. I'm like, okay, you could have told me earlier. I'm out here. So I said, okay, show me again. I give angle 1 and you'll do pluma differently. And I said, that's not what you showed me last time. He goes, do it like this. And I'm like, okay, I got it, man. I got it. So he'd sit down. Simon would feed me and I'd do it. And then I see his eyes wander, like look down and wander. I said, Tang, what's wrong? He said, you don't listen to me. I showed you twice. I'm like, oh, shit. One more time. And I'm like, this can't be that hard.
My gosh.
So I do angle 1 again, and he does pluma, and it's different. And I'm like, you fucking with me. Or am I just jet lag and I'm not getting it? So then I do it again, and he's shaking his head again. And I said, can you please why can't I get this technique? And this is the most important thing for everyone that's listening, right? This was like the genie came out of the bottle for me. He said, the first time you gave me angle 1, you were standing still and your feet were parallel. And I was like angle 1 and I'm trying to look and watch him, right? So you can only extend to here, which means you couldn't hit me anyway. My stick stopped, So all I had to do was this. But when you're when the student struck me, I was stepping in and doing all this stuff. And so the range was all goofy. But he didn't tell me the range was goofy yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, the second time you struck me, your right leg is forward and you stepped in, which means you were stepping through the range. So I had to step this way to do the technique. And the third time you did it, your left foot was forward because you were looking through the other side. I was watching him do the technique on the other side. So, but there's like defense against angle one, right? No, there's one technique, 3 applications, because I struck him 3 different ways.
Right, because one time you stepped in, one time you stepped in, you're looking over here. Yeah.
You know, if you're standing parallel, here it is. My arm can only go to here for angle 1. When I step forward with my right leg, look, my body can twist. Left leg, it can't. It's hard to cross past, but it's different from the right full twist. So each time his range and his gait and his foot lead changed. And I said, there's something here. And then when we started training with blades, I was scared shitless. And we were in Tony Diego's gym in Binondo. And they had a big anaconda or something, some big snake. Tom D, who's Tony's successor is now.
Yes, in Canada.
Yeah, been in Canada for a long time, but you know, that was his place and he had Tony there. And we go up and train, and Tatan took his bolo, his itak, and it was all crispy and jagged and rusty. And he's like, parry and do this. And I'm like, I'm going to get tetanus. I'm going to lose my finger. I don't want to do this stuff. And he just pushed me to the wall and he said, whatever you do, he said, just don't move. He said, if you move, you might not go home. Don't move. And I said, okay. And he took the thing and was like, pow, 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 pow. And he was swinging the sword at me. And I was like, I swear I was going to pee my pants. And the thing was like, and he said, if you move, you're going to move, and he's just swinging at me and swinging and swinging and swinging and swinging all these angles. And he did it until he saw me go, okay, he's not going to kill me, and he saw the blood pressure come down. Like you stand there and watch the blade. He says, now you're not afraid. Now walk into the blade and to do your defense. Never walk in an angle away from the blade. Never zone away from the blade when you do your blade techniques, because you will always be open to get hit. Always walk toward the blade. Angle 1, walk toward angle 1. Backhand, walk toward the backhand, and you cut it off. And I was like, I'm not walking into your your horizontal.
It's so counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive. But I got that, and it took a while. And then that was a whole idea about the idea of hitting where the shadows are, right? From that first lesson to how to do it now, because he's saying, don't be afraid of the blade. Because once you're afraid, you do your technique halfway and you kind of pull back and you're afraid. You have to commit. So the first thing is don't be afraid. The second thing is trust the technique. And this is my explanation, not what he said.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next thing is do it again and again and again, to get it. And then, one thing we do is only practice the correct techniques in the right range against the correct angles. I never, for sake of having fun, have guys do techniques that are in the wrong range for the wrong reason, right? So you see a lot of guys, the angle 4 comes and they'll zone backward, the backhand, right? And they'll zone out and do like a shield block or something, or a wing block, whatever they call them. And totally, I would never do it ever after training with Tatan. And now whenever I go places and people do it, it's like, woo, I can hit you, leak and flow, That's our slogan, leak and flow.
Yeah, leak and flow.
Just be like Wata and move around. And don't worry about blocking, just hit direct. Tatan showed me, did it on me, and then he told me the secret. And then he said, the next lessons were all about what foot is forward, how far is he coming in, if you're striking me in medium range versus you're coming into close range. Even if I have the same technique, my footwork has to be different because it has to match the range and my space between me and you. And so I took all of that information and put it into the fundamentals of integrated eskrima and say, we're only going to train based on these sets of principles and rules. And anything that I learned from any teacher that could be good anyway, on a one-off technique that breaks those, it's out of the system. So there's like 90% out the window that I don't even do anymore. Because for me now, by understanding range and gait and leak and flow are main things, everything is easy to counter, right? And then I developed a categorization method called modes of defense, and all the FMA techniques fall into 4. And once you understand that 1 is the most effective and 4th is the least effective, and most guys are 4 and 2, then your 3s and 1s can beat them, right? So then if he's a block and control guy, you use 1 and 2. If he's a guy who deflects and hits, you use 1 and 2. If he's a guy who likes to go straight, you use 3. You know, and it's a math. It's a chess or checkers scenario. Right. And then that's only for the first move, and after that, use range and control and leak and flow to control the encounter and stop it. So you have to keep in mind that what is the plot, and the plot is I'm being attacked and I have to stop the attacker. The plot isn't how long can we do this flow, box flow? How long can we do lock and block? How fast can we hit each other with Remy's pattern, you know, or Angel's pattern, or Inosano's pattern, or whose ever pattern? Because none of that is teaching you to break the pattern and win. Right?
Right.
How many disarms can you do out of the box pattern? Who cares? It's irrelevant because nobody's attacking you in that box pattern.
I know. It's like it's such a false sense. Like they just think because they're doing it in that environment that it's going to like pan.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I do got some questions though, and this is fantastic. By the way, we're just going to go just backwards just a bit, and these questions are.
Hey, Maestro Bong, how are you?
Yeah, Maestro. Maestro Alvin would like to know, how about like any updates to the existing publications, or and also any future projects coming down the line?
Yeah. Plenty. So I just re-released the Filipino Fighting Arts Theory and Methods.
I saw that. Okay.
Yeah. So that came out in 2000 and went out of print right away, and the publisher never reprinted it. So what's that, 21 years? So I got the rights back and I re-released it. So that's out now. So that's new to almost everybody if they don't have it.
Yeah, right.
So it's 25 styles compared, not against each other, but presented in the same format. What are your training methods? What are your application theories? How do you train? How do you spar? You know, from 25 different FMA styles. Many, probably half of those styles are not in the martial culture book. Book came.
Yeah, like Sayon, for instance, was in that one, and he wasn't in martial culture. Yeah. Right.
And I'm working on part 2 of that book now. And I have let's see, I went back to the Philippines and, well, I had a ton of information already, number one. And then I went back in 2013 and again in 2015, and I met up with some of the new younger masters like Bong Abner and William Melchor Mosco, and, you know, different guys, Jay Jumawan, different guys who are out there now promoting. And I took pictures and videos and interviewed them so I could include them in the second volume. It's like, and then there's some leftovers, Juni Cañete and some other older masters who didn't make the first edition are going to be in there. And then a bunch of the newer guys, right? Just like you can see the progression, right? Will be in those 2 books. And then I'm doing a revised edition of the Arnis Reflections book, adding, the publisher took all the photos out. So I'm adding in all the photos and adding additional chapters. So that one's coming out with more information. And those are the last 2. The Mastering Eskrima Disarms book, I'm having a volume 2 on that, which is called Training Drills and Reversals. So how to train disarms and how to do counters to all the disarms that are shown. And then how to train to get those counters, right? So and then like in the back of the first one, Eskrima Disarms, there's about 20 or so teachers doing 3 or 4 disarms each in their style. Well, I've got another 20 to add in the back that aren't in the first one, different styles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've got tons of material to come out. And then I think I'll probably try to put together a video documentary, and then I'll be done. I think that take me 5 or 6 years, and then I'm tired.
Yeah, you'll be. When
Well, you know, the hold on one second.
Sure.
Let me just say, okay. I'm just I don't have the same passion I had at 18 and 20 and 24. And, you know, I made 23 trips to the Philippines between the, 24 till I was 40 something. I'm coming up on 52. Hard to believe. I still feel like a young kid. And I'm just, plus all the trips to Malaysia and Singapore and Hong Kong and all the other places. And I'm just, it's like, I've got kids. My son's 22. My daughter's 15. My two stepdaughters are 14 each. They're twins. There's just a lot going on.
No, it's tough. It's tough when the kids come into play. I mean,
yeah. And there's no money in FMA in writing. I mean, my first Serrata Screamer book was a big, a #1 bestseller for martial arts for Tuttle when it came out in '94. It sold like 25,000 copies or something. But I think I made $2,000 on it. But that didn't even pay the first trip, right? I mean, we get like 10 cents a book. It's ridiculous. And then I had people come up to me in Stockton like, you made 200,000 on that book. We calculated it. You owe money to this person and that person. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck off. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the martial culture book, my God, that sold about 20 or 30,000 copies. It was great for Tuttle, great for FMA. All those teachers were nameless outside of the field. Now, KI is big. Nobody would know about it. Nobody would know about
100%. I mean, you deserve.
And it's 100%. Funny because the and great grand students now are like, oh, Wiley doesn't know anything, and he was just an outside. It's like, yeah, I'm like above your teacher. I mean, I trained directly with Tatang,
Yeah, I know. It's just terrible.
But there's no money in martial art publishing anymore or ever. So it's hard to squirrel away the time for it, and for the past.
It's not gonna be a priority.
But I have all this content that I'd like to release. I don't want it to just, crumble away in the boxes in my archive shelves,
No.
It needs to be out there. Maybe I can do a Patreon and people can donate $10 and you get 1,000 people to donate, and I can.
No, they should be able to do that. That's crazy.
I would like to release all the videos I have and the photos and audio interviews and really have a nice thing. I just don't have the time and just can't afford to do it all. But,
no, it's tough. No, believe me, I know. Like, just I can only imagine. I mean, just if I'm doing these interviews a couple times a week, and that's nothing to what I do got another question from Alvin, and he wants to know, from all dating back to when you first started, how has the propagation of FMA evolved since your initial either Cabalis or Venus?
So that's something I really, when I was trying to look toward, like, is there an origin of FMA, right? When I started researching. A quick aside, one guy published an article in the Manila Times right after the martial culture book came out. He's another writer. He wrote his own book on FMA. But anyway, he wrote an article and said, Mark Wiley is nothing but a carpetbagger stealing our national treasures and making up stories about them. And then I responded to him and I said, I brought home from the Philippines 172 books and archive articles and reprints from the universities and every grandmaster and master I met. Many of them had unpublished manuscripts and they gave them to me for my and I have them, and y'all have never seen them. And I have all this content that you don't even know about that informed the writing, right? And he said, well, I guess you got the wrong 172 books. But anyway, getting back to so I was trying to find an origin. First, I was trying to find Kali, like who's the master of Kali, right? And then the origin of all FMA. And what I come to realize is you have the pre-colonial stuff, which I just term ancient. It's whatever was there well before prehistory, you could say, right? And we don't know what came where from where. We just know it wasn't 3 Malay migrations in. It was indigenous people, the Aitas, the Igorot, they're all been there forever, right? and they developed their things. Then we know in the classical period, the Spanish came in for 333 years. And with their education and their language, which is why a lot of the artists taught in Spanish, because it was a national language, not because it's taken from Spanish fencing. I mean, this is another pet peeve of mine. Everybody thinks, well, the Spanish were there and the art's Spanish, taught in Spanish, so it must all come from Spanish fencing. Well, you know what? All the fighters and the workmen on those boats were not Spaniards because they were upper class. They were Dutch and German. So if anything, it's coming from, you should look into the Dutch and German fighting art books.
Wow.
Not the Spanish
Interesting.
books. And it was all known back in the day that the Spaniards got, this is what happens with academics who, they get too caught up in the academia and the thought process of all the circles with all the lines and the triangles. You can see it in all the Spanish books, right? That they got so caught up in that they lost the practicality a little bit. And they started to decline against the German and Dutch schools of fencing, right? So go check out the German and Dutch, you guys who all think it comes from the Spanish, just because Spanish was a national language. Done. Okay. And later, some guys opened, and were some of the friars who were there teaching knew fencing, right? They knew épée and saber. So, like Ramiro Estelilia, one of my mentors in the Juan Northern Luzon style, he also is a preacher, a friar, and he also does fencing, épée, saber, and foil. So he learned in the Philippines fencing, and he learned arnis, but from different teachers, right? And so there were schools for fencing there, and there was arnis training, but they don't necessarily that one came from the other, although I think there has to be some crossover, because undoubtedly when you look in those old European fencing books and sword fighting books, or there's just so many ways hands can move, weapons can move. But it was quite crude back in the day. And then during the Spanish time, especially in Manila, it came up some way and from the 1920s with the Doce Paras group and the Balintawak group and all these groups that formed the Saavedras, the Illustrissimos. I mean, the art really came into its own, in Cebu. And then in Bacolod, in Negros, a whole nother group of teachers there with their own methods, and really strong group of guys there, right? And then after World War II, the Japanese came in with judo, aikido, and karate and set up clubs. And that's where we start seeing the Filipino guys wearing gis or uniforms, wearing belts, lining the students up in lines, right? Yep. Angle one, angle two, because they found a way where we could get 50 people on a football field and teach our niece.
No. Uniformity.
And that's where that started to come in. And then all these wrist locks and throws and arm bars. Everybody's like, oh, well, that's the Dumog and that's the Buna. Those are terms, okay? And those are arts to specific ethno-linguistic groups. It's not Dumog is the grappling art of the Philippines. Oh, there's just one? Like Kali is the mother, there's just one? I mean, there's plenty. A guy wrote a book, Nidanima, called Filipino Martial Arts. And in there, he has like 12 different breakdowns of different Filipino grappling things. And it's hard to find. It's out of print, but if you can get a copy, it gives a nice overview. And he's saying, well, this one was a game at this festival. It's like Indian arm wrestling that we call here in America. You try to knock the guy. Okay. It's like sumo. Some of it's like wrestling, like Western wrestling style. And that's been brought back a bit. But it's not like, the Kali has the Pangamut and the Buno or the Dumog. These are just terms that Americans have thrown.
I think Dumog is like the umbrella term. I think it's like you say Dumog, and then it's just what I mean? But not specific to any region or
it's just a term. But after World War II, when they set up Aikido and Judo schools and karate schools, these type of techniques came into arnis, right? So they came into modern arnis, lightning arnis. They came into Geraldo Alcazar, these different. Dak Lang Sun with his arnis and karate mix. They started coming in, and then they had belt ranks and uniforms, because now they learn how to teach something and structure. Although I don't think it was the best way for FMA, which needs to be a little bit more fluid and less by the numbers.
Right.
I think it evolved during that time. So then you have up through, that started in 45, and then you have all the way through. Then it was taught at the military bases. Sulik Nebe, Carlito Lanyada, his Kun Tao. And his Kun Tao is not Chinese or Malay Kun Tao. It's KAW. Hot Tao, Sacred Strike, a different thing. It's an acronym like Kali. It has nothing to do with the other stuff. Knock it off. People trying to come in and say differently.
No, I know that's a whole.
Differently. The other people, I don't want to say the white people because I'm white, but the Americans, the foreigners.
The West. What I say is Western. The Western civilization.
The Westerners, the Westerners.
Yeah.
Even the Western Filipino teachers who were raised here came here from the Philippines, But anyway, but now, okay, so up through, let's see, until I'd say the late 90s, when just about, recently, Mang Vic Sanchez passed away. He was like, Ramiro Estelilla is like 90 now. He's like the oldest guy. Junie
the first generation, right? Yeah.
But all the guys in my book, almost all of them in the martial.
I was gonna say they're all passed, except for Leo.
Yeah, Leo's still around.
Yeah,
him. Yeah, Professor Benias, Presas, Cabalis.
I know.
Tata, Ben Lima, Jose Mina, Edgar Salite, Ricketts, Tony Diego.
Sad.
It's a gone generation. But since that time and the advent of YouTube. So we could say first there was the ancient or prehistoric arts. Then starting with history was with the Spanish, where they started recording things. So we have that 300 years of development. Then we have the World War II to the late 90s development of the art, right? Then the next piece is today, which is YouTube forward.
YouTube, yeah.
Because now all of these guys that I knew that are now maestros, right, were students back then, and I know their teachers and I know where they come from, and etc. Or if I don't know them personally, I still knew their teachers and their art, right, by sight and by knowledge. And now they have all this crap they have all these techniques that are not indigenous to the Philippines, right, that are from Silat, that are from MMA, that are from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Where did tomahawks come in? Native American. Where did tomahawks start coming into FMA? And the karumbit, which is Malay, they don't really have karumbit in the Philippines.
I know, that's the whole thing, right? That's a Silat. Yeah, I know.
So there's all this stuff now that's in FMA in this current 20-year period that was never there before this 20-year period.
Yeah.
So we could say it's just another extension of the art growing. Because prehistoric then got some Spanish or Western fencing and arts in, and then it was the Japanese after World War II, so you get some of that in, and now it's Sensei YouTube, and we're getting the MMA and the Silat and the JKD and everything else. Okay, so the Filipinos is probably then the most progressive martial art because it's always evolving and not stuck in its own tradition.
Interesting.
Or it's a tradition of always grabbing new things.
Or grabbing from
technology.
Yeah.
So then if that's it, who cares about then all the history and stuff? Because you can never really trace it now anymore because everybody's grabbing from YouTube, right? So it's going to be real hard for someone to come out now and write I could never write Filipino martial culture now. I'd be confused. Like, okay, where's the tomahawk? Where's the karumbit from? Where's that MMA? Right. Where's the BJJ leg takedown techniques in the FMA? Like, where can I trace that to? I could never. It's impossible. It was hard enough when I did it in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's impossible now. So we just have to say my book is an artifact of a gone time,
How interesting. What did
you but we can say positively then that FMA is always evolving, right? But it's starting to lose its characteristics because now with everybody branding. So let's just, and no disrespect, all arts are doing it in every art around the world. Yeah. Everybody's branding in yoga. They're branding as self-help coaches. They're branding in, martial arts. So in modern arnis alone, there's probably 100 brands. You know, I'm modern arnis Dumag. I'm modern arnis Mano Mano. I'm modern arnis 80. Love you, Dan Anderson. I'm modern arnis Silat. I'm Kuntal arnis modern Bali. You know, it's like, okay, but you all train with Remy Presas or one of his students.
Yeah.
Right. But then you're all adding in the other art stuff from YouTube or whatever you're doing. So you feel like you need to brand. And it's this idea that FMA teachers need to brand to get students, to keep students, and to build a seminar career and a teaching career.
Which comes down to money.
It's all about survival, right? I mean, otherwise, none of these guys were making money when I went there.
No, I'm sure they weren't.
They taught for free. I would go, I'd give them money, I'd buy them breakfast, and then second, third, fourth trip, I started buying them clothing. They didn't have a lot of clothes. You know, I always brought Tony Diego 3-4 pairs of pants and shirts. You know, every time I see him, he's in the same clothes. You know, Tupper Ricketts, he always wanted books. Ray Golling would send him like punching bags and wooden dummies and training equipment, so he'd have stuff to train. You know, so the payment back then really was that. And for me, some of the masters like Ben Lima wouldn't let me interview him the first time because other people had come there. Leo Hiron would not let me interview him. He said, "I'll talk to you, but no recording," because other people had recorded him and videoed and put it out and never paid him or never put it out. And then Ben Lima then on the second time I met him, he said, "Okay, I'll talk to you." And then after every 10 questions or 5, he said, "Okay, that's enough for today." And then I'd say, "Okay, just one more thing," like Columbo. One more thing, you know. And then I get a nice interview, and then he'd see the book because I mailed everybody a copy of the book, or I brought them with me. And then when they saw that, it was like, okay, he's for real.
Yeah, right. They said that you were genuine, you were true.
And I did something for them. So then they just started teaching me. I want to show you everything I know because my art's better than their art's in the book. And I want you to know it now. And let's take pictures for the next book. And that's where the fighting arts book came. All the extra photos and the extra talking and the extra training. Okay. And I needed to put it somewhere. So I said it'd be neat to compare the systems side by side a little bit, you know. Yeah. And then same thing with Leo Hiron. He opened up, you know, we became good friends, and Tony Somera was like a brother to me. And we used to go to the old age, you know, the senior home to see Leo and talk to him and stuff. And real sad. Both of them have passed away. I mean, I know. Everyone's
I think Leo, Gaye, Estelia, like you mentioned.
That's about it.
I think there's,
Johnny Cañete. There's not many left.
No.
So in Lapu Lapu Arnis, I had, you know, I trained with Herminio Viñas, but then I also trained with Wilson Nonong Viñas, who was Jose Viñas' son. So I trained with him, and we were working on a book together, and I got his forward, and then he passed away. Like out of nowhere. He just, all of a sudden he's passed away. And it's like, what happened? You know?
Before we get to, because if you're still good, we'll keep pushing.
Tabak ni Bonifacio, and Batangas, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm reading the question. I'm reading the stuff on the side.
Yeah. I know. But before we get to your system and all that, we're beyond an hour and a half. But if you're okay, we keep pushing. We'll keep moving.
Okay.
I do want to, you know, I do want to ask you something. You know, as far as like, and it kind of ties into propagation of the arts and all that. And one thing I noticed by starting this channel, like, you know, in the beginning, and I'll admit it, there's a big naive aspect to me, and all that. And like people say, oh, you know, you're doing this good, you're bringing the community together and all that. And what I'm wondering is it the community being brought together, or is the facade of bringing the facade of
it's a facade because the teachers don't want to be brought together.
Thank you. And I'm seeing that, but I can't say that on the channel because I'm like,
I'll say it because I don't care what people say anymore, you know. But it's a facade. So in 13 or 15, when I was in the Philippines, there was a big meeting of grandmasters to celebrate the anniversary of Remy Presas's passing, and they invited me, and the head of Arnis Philippines was there. All these senior Remy students were there, were Daldago Uk and different people, and Shishir Inokalia, my good friend, and a whole bunch of people, and they gave me an ambassador's thing for ambassador to Filipino arts to the world and all these nice things. And it was quite touching. But I realized in that moment where we're all celebrating the memory and art of Remy, everybody had their own name style on their business cards. So it's the facade of coming together, but everybody's actually doing their own thing. And this is the problem. Luel Lieto started the Mata Guru Association, and he brought in all these different styles together. I published his book called FMA Education. Everyone should get it, tumbulimedia.com. But it's a very good book on the fundamentals of Arnis. And there's some good history in there that's not in my books about some other propagators of Arnis. And he's trying to create a basic core curriculum for everyone to use in FMA. Right? Like this is the basic core of the thing. Then you have your styles, right? Yeah. Like you need to get these core things down that are fundamental to all FMA, almost all FMA. And when you have that, then you can go Balintawak, Sarada, Pakiti Tership, KI, right? But at least you have a strong foundation in the core fundamentals of FMA. And he had this great idea to pull in all these teachers, and I hosted for them the Mata Guru Association, and we had Shishir come in and Luel Lieto and some Sikaran styles and different peoples, and we hosted the first World FMA forum, and we were sponsored by 5 groups in the Philippines: the Philippine Sport Commission, the Cultural and Arts Association, Arnis Philippines, like all these big Philippine associations supporting this first World Unity group. And after that, nothing happened. And all the Mata Guru guys, after they got their title and their rank, and there's no rank, but like I'm a ambassador through the Mata Guru, and I'm Mata Guru this and that. They all were off doing their own things again and not bothering. Yeah. And nobody was teaching that core curriculum in their schools.
Nobody was teaching the core, right?
Because they're like, well, that's not really all in my style, and you know, and who are you to tell me that that's my core?
Right, that I should adapt.
And then that. So you have a couple of people who really try hard to do this unity, and just nobody wants to follow because nobody wants to have another teacher tell them what they're going to teach. And if they have to then tell their students, okay, everything you learned up to now, just hold it for a minute, because now we're going to do this fundamental core training now. You just lose students, and it's just really hard to pull off. And Luel's not doing well, and he was in the hospital for quite a long time. And it's just a great idea that they'll have an event. And then another group in the Philippines didn't want to be with him, so they split off and went to Miguel Zubiri to start another competing group. And then it's like, come on, man, you know, you guys were part of that, and now you started another one. Yeah. And it's just like, again, there's no point to it but to say, I'm in charge of this, but I'm still doing my own thing. And I just don't see anybody working together. You know? I
know. So it's like, am I wasting my time? I've been reflecting on that for the last couple of weeks. No, I'm just being honest. Like, I'm kind of voicing it to you because you've been, you know, obviously on the block and have so much more exposure than I do. Like, I've been wondering the last couple of weeks, like when I'm like, for instance, I'm just gonna be honest, because at this point, man, like you said, I'm starting not to care anymore. Like what I hear people think. Like I have 4,700 members in the group, and yet I only have like 800 something on YouTube and all that. So there's obviously a big disconnect there.
Yeah,
there's a huge disconnect. It's huge. So we're not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're not a unified, cohesive. Because if we were, and people were really saying, "Oh, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate this is great," and there would be evidence of that and a correlation to the signups on YouTube. So I'm just starting to think, like, what am I doing?
Manong Sambuat, who passed away recently, hosted a FMA gathering of grandmasters in Arizona, and I was a guest instructor, and Ron Balicki and Bobby Tabawada and all these guys from the Philippines came, and big unity thing, and everyone's happy to talk and be. But every teacher who taught, the other teachers left the room or went to the back and talked among themselves. Nobody wanted to be involved with the other teaching, you know? And it's like, I see the same thing at seminars all over. The teachers, when another teacher's teaching, they want to talk to the other students and pull some students aside for themselves and do a little group on the side, which is so rude, because you should just,
rude.
You know, maybe you should even get in line and do the thing just to support the event, right? Like we're all one. And Sam's event was very good, but the teachers weren't every teacher was there for their class, right? They weren't really there to do more than teach their class, and nobody's, you know, they weren't contributing to. I published Sam's book, and they weren't helping us sell it to their students. You know, I mean, it's a real struggle. You know, that's it's.
I know it is. It's like the thing is, I'm doing this because obviously I want to do it. I didn't do this because I was expecting something on the back end. You know that, and people that generally know me know that. Matter of fact, if this channel ever does whatever, I've already said that the money's going to the Philippines for various charitable organizations and all that. But there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? You know, it's like there is. It's like, and I've always tried to be adamant about try to be part of the solution, all that. But you know, when you get sand kicked in your face enough times, you know, it's you know what I mean? It's and you've gotten a lot of sand
death threats, people coming to my house, you know, out in Stockton, a bunch of the guys trying to corner me, you know, and me and Anthony Davis Anthony Davis sticking up for me, which is great. Tony Samara sticking up, you know, Darren Tibone sticking up. But, you know, some guys just corner me and like, motherfucker, you lying bitch, and you owe money for this and that. And I just look at them straight and I'm like, let me tell you something. You don't know what you're talking about, you know, and it's just like they back down because you have no idea. Like, you don't know what any of this shit means, right? Like, you might be Filipino and you might have been brought up in Stockton, and that's a hard town and you bang hard, but you've never been to the Philippines and you didn't interview 600,000 people, research 800,000 books, so shut your mouth. You know, I don't have time for it. I just don't have time for it. You don't want to hear it. That's fine. The greatest thing that happened to me was that Facebook came out and YouTube, because now the new generation can verify the research in my book that everybody claimed I was lying about. And now it's become public knowledge.
Isn't that weird how it comes around full circle?
Yeah. But now, because everybody can meet any master from any country on YouTube, on Facebook, it's no longer like a special privileged thing to like have to get an introduction, find a way to travel. You can just do a live video and train, and the whole thing is different, you know. But back then there was no internet when I was doing it. I mean,
that's what makes it even more amazing.
We didn't have internet. We didn't have email.
I know.
It was mailing letters and making long distance phone calls and having to fly there and hope that you don't forget your questions or to turn on the video camera. You know.
No, I know. I think that's what makes it so much more incredible what you did, because of not even having none of the technology that people have today. I know that. But we're gonna
somebody asked a question up the line. I don't see the name anymore, but it was like, in the pre-Spanish time, wasn't Silat everywhere in the Philippines? And my answer is no. Silat was in the Malay communities, and there were small Malay communities in Manila and in Mindanao, but mostly not throughout the rest of the Philippines. It wasn't a Malay nation. So the Silat, even today, is kept within the Malay communities. So I was friends with one Pendekar, Tananjalan there, who he called me when his house got bombed by the Abu Sayyaf and all these things. And, you know, he passed away, of course, but I mean, it's been a while. But he was Muslim and he taught his Muslim group, and then he would teach some non-Muslims outside that group. When I went to Mindanao, I had armed scouts with me with machine guns in the back of the truck guarding me, going down to see the tribes and to meet the different teachers. Very dangerous, you know. And I saw an article in Time magazine in 1986, or and it said about the Tad or Chop Chop. It was a fanatical group in the Philippines that would whip, go into trance and strike with swords, and you see the cuts but no bleeding, and now they're terrorists, and and they're fighting against the government. And so when I went to Mindanao, Miguel Zubiri took me down. As he was a congressman, his father was a senator, and he got me these scouts together, and he took me out got me to go out to the tribes and to be safe. And I said, I want to meet this Tad group from Time Magazine. And he said, okay, I know where they are. I'll take you to meet the head. And I went out and met him and took pictures and interviewed him. And a little scary,
I bet.
and it's like, okay, that's like real good stuff, but their stuff is not Arnis or Eskrima.
No.
And the Silat stuff is not Eskrima. And the Kung Fu is not Eskrima. And the Kung Fu has been there for 400 or 500 years, right? The Chinese communities. So just because there's Silat in the Muslim communities and Kung Fu in the Chinese communities doesn't mean that they are responsible for what we know as FMA today.
No.
Americans, we eat Chinese food. It's Americanized, right? Yeah. But mostly we're not eating authentic Chinese food.
No, I bet. Yeah.
And in the Chinese restaurants, they have a separate menu for the Chinese. It's in Chinese and I know because I go all the time and I ask for that menu now, and it's different dishes it's no beef and broccoli and sweet and sour. None of that
chicken and broccoli and
you go. It's funny, but
But we're gonna jump into
so screwy. You can't look at the books that came out, and I don't want to be arrogant about it because I'm not. Just don't believe the history in the books before the martial culture book came out, because they weren't well researched, right? There was all oral history told by their teachers, right?
Okay.
Remy Presas's teacher told him his history, and Monte Marinas' teachers told him their history. That's what they put. Dan and Asano had many teachers. They told them what they recalled.
Yeah, right. Whatever he was exposed to verbally.
Yeah, it's all oral, and none of them went to college. Most didn't go to high school. So they're just telling what their teacher told them. And that's like a great snapshot in time. Those books, and then the martial culture book's not perfect, of course. That I thought would be a launch pad for other researchers, but nobody's tackled it really. Since then.
No.
But it at least is based in researched information and interviews with hundreds of people.
No. I mean, no.
Yeah.
To this day, I think it's one of the best books out there.
I read Don Drager's book. He was one of my heroes coming up.
Yeah, Don Drager. Yeah.
The Weapons and Fighting Arts of Indonesia book.
Yeah.
And I tried to copy that format for the Philippines, but you couldn't go island by island. Like he had the arts of Sumatra and the arts of this island of Bali, and the art, because everybody's moving around in the Philippines for a job. The arts just all the Cebuano arts are in Manila, and Manila's down here, and the teachers are moving and trying to earn a living. So you can't really say so much. You can just look generally and say the group in Bacolod has this kind of a flavor. The group in Cebu, the different groups in Cebu have this kind of flavor, and the groups in Manila have this kind of flavor, but there's not like a single style, Or
understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna jam out integrated Eskrima. So now this is where the bulk of my questions from guys are. But before I get to their questions, why and when? So what was the inspiration for you to kind of create your own system? And when?
A couple of clarifications. One is it's a teaching method, right? So I didn't create anything new. I just organized the material. So it's not Wiley Eskrima, right? And by integrated, I'm integrating everybody's arts together. Integrated means that everything that's relevant to the core of the teaching, the strikes, the footwork, the range, the gait, the defenses, right? The checks, pass, parry, lift, press, the disarms, they are all integrated, right? Not that the styles are integrated, because I'm not taking Angel and Benias and Ben Lima and Professor V and Tatang and integrating their methods.
Yeah.
I found the core of what they were doing, And then I see the core from these lessons from Venus and Tatang and Angel. They all spark different things in my different, decades that led me to see something very clearly.
Okay.
And then when I saw that clearly, I spent a long time creating a curriculum around only that material, only those things. So you would never, you can't say never, but the chance of doing a wrong technique at a wrong time is greatly diminished because the training method doesn't allow for that, because we're always very specific in the response.
Okay.
Right? So like Tatang teaching me pluma, if someone's striking you angle 1 and they're in medium range and haven't moved, and I'm a little bit in long range, if they step forward, of course, now they're in close range, they can hit me. Or, they stepped into medium range, they can hit me. But if they don't, they're not going to hit me, or it's just barely going to hit me. So my defense of moving my range or my gait is different than if they were charging at me. Right? Or if their left leg was forward when they were striking. So when we can understand that, so that's the whole foundation is, we have the 3 ranges is your vertical, and 3 gates are your horizontal. So that's your grid on the floor, range and gate. And every single technique, the way they're named and integrated as Eskrima is by range and gate first and the technique last. So it's not pluma, right? So the range and gate is moved by the footwork. So I would say tatlong bao pluma. So I do the 3-step coconut shells, which is like this, right? Yeah. And it moves me if my nose is the guy striking, and it's moving me from the inside gate to the outside gate, but I haven't changed my range.
Right.
Right? Okay. So I haven't changed my range, but I changed my gate. That's one way. Whereas if you do like this one, you change your gate, but not your range, but not your gate. Right? So your defense would be different, right? So by starting with the understanding of range and gate, your footwork goes first. That's the first thing. When the guy strikes, where are you moving? Yeah. And that's how Tatang hit me without looking at me. Just hit the light, like the whack-a-mole. Just hit the light, right? So if you think of that first, and then the leak and flow, right? So, and I want to get to the gap and hit in that open area. So when somebody strikes you with angle 1, most people are looking to block angle 1. Right. Right? I say right now, here's all this space. Now here's space, and behind it is space. If this is not space, so that's not where I'm going to be. So I don't want to block. I want to direct it recta, right? Recta, yeah. So I would say when we say recta, we'd say lutang recta. So lutang is Tatang's floating step. Yep. That moves me from medium range to long range to medium range without changing the gate. It's vertical. And recta is a straight chop. So when the strike comes, I lutang recta the hand and recta the face. So that's called doblete. So we have to know what are the names of the combinations. So we can understand the context of the strike. So there's combination names that are central to most FMA, right? So we have, for example, doblete is a doubling of the same strike. So if I'm doing lutang recta doblete, I'm doing recta twice. I'm dobleteing it. And lutang is my range change, recta. His strike's coming in. I can't do it backwards. The strike's coming in. So the first lutang is inside gate. I'm lutanged out. Now the second strike is on the outside gate. Now I'm on the outside of his arm where I can come in and step into close range and finish the encounter. I'm not going to sit there and keep blocking, countering him and stay in my range. I'm going to move off while I'm striking and strike the second step in to catch the distance, right? So I say that would be lutang is the footwork, recta is the strike, doblete is how to do the strike. Another one is dos andanas, which is doblete is 2 strikes on the same line in the same direction, right? Like 2 12s, 2 1s, 1 1, right? And then 2 strikes on the same line in opposite directions we call dos andanas. So that would be your rompida is an example for modernese. Down then up, right? We could call that fraile, or major fraile, or fraile recta. Yeah. The dos andanas. So under these bigger categories, you have the technique combos, right? And then you mix that with your initial counter. And that's how you structure a technique in integrated.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
Right? But all you have to know is these like 12 things as your template, and everything lands into this template, every technique. And after you learn, I have up a distance learning program for integrated Eskrima. It's 8 modules, 8 courses. It's like, but that takes you to angle 5. But that's all you have to know, because after that, we go, the next courses aren't filmed yet, but they will be. You've got 6 to 12, which are all modifications of 1 to 5.
Okay.
Only a little modification, right?
Yeah.
And then you have double stick. Okay, just a modification. Two-handed stick, dos manos, or topado, right? And then you have a spotty daga. You have sword. It's just a little modification. If you get this core 1 to 5, and it's the 1 to 5 on this template, the rest is so easy because you're just plugging it into the template.
You're just plugging. No, I got you.
Yeah, and it's all part of the muscle memory, because we always say out loud the name. You know, lutang recta patapias. You know, luplang doblete. You know, pagiwas alis, whatever. You know, bagsak salok. Great. You know, and it's so easy to, you just get it in your head, and it takes maybe a year to get all the terms.
Yeah,
you know? And the terms that I keep are all different, like Tagalog, Spanish, Ilocano, because I name them from the teacher that taught me that technique.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So there's where it goes back to the teachers. And even though I studied with probably over 30 or so teachers in the Philippines and the US, 7 systems I went all the way through. And those are the guys that get credit.
Okay, and those are the main ones that you got in there.
You know, Presas and Vinyas and Cabalis and Professor V,
KI,
and Tatang and Benjamin Luna Lima, and Ramiro Estelilias Cabarawan, right? So those I went white belt to, you know, I went through the curriculums. The other guys I trained with and exchanged and learned some things, but for some reason it just seemed repetitive to others I already had, where if I had met that person before this person, it would have been his thing, you know.
I got you. No.
Like that. But the integrated Eskrima is based on that. And then so you're asking about the genesis of it. Was I thought to myself, why is it that I spent 3 years doing this? Why is it that when I do flow sparring with Angel Cabalis, granted he was 74 and I was 24 or 20 or 18, you know, that I could always hit him with an angle 3 off an umbrella block.
Yeah.
For some reason, but I couldn't hit Remy Presas with that combo. So there's something interesting, right? And how come every time I try and do that on Tatang, I couldn't do anything because he wouldn't stay there, and I do this, and the sword would be under my jaw, completely different.
Yes.
So when I videotaped them all and took notes from them all and asked questions for them all, I started getting answers, and then I made poster boards of every technique from all the styles, and I put in, when Angel strikes me with his 1, his right leg is forward and my right leg is forward on this, and then I do this and I can hit him. When Remy does it, his left leg is forward and I can't hit him because there's automatically a defense for him by his body position.
By having the left leg forward.
Right. Okay. Because it made it easier for a stick to drop or his hand to pass, for whatever reason, biomechanically. And then how come with Tatang, again, that lesson I talked about in the beginning. And then I took 3 years of going through this. Good thing my son was just 3 to 6 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and then it condensed down, and all these extra techniques just flew out to the side.
Right. You're just
I want to do this now with this foot forward. That's how it started. And then when I finally got to the place of, okay, what's the real core here? Of it's not whose foot is forward, it's why is it forward? And that came in those lessons with Tatang, which most of his guys didn't get because they filmed him and replicated, and they all knew other styles, Balintawak, Modern Arnis, etc.
Around their previous, right.
So so I mean, I have old tapes of Tony Diego teaching drills and saying it's Illustrissimo style Balintawak. So he took a Balintawak drill, did it Illustrissimo style. When they were first learning with Tatang, they had to somehow find a way to teach and practice.
To find out how to integrate. Okay.
Yeah. So their development Yuli Romo came out of his previous training, and Tony's came out of his, and Tupers came out of his, and Ray Gollings came out. So they all look a little different, even though it's all Illustrissimo, right?
Right.
The only one I think who didn't have previous training was Romy Macapagal, who's still alive.
Yeah.
You know, so his is pretty straight Illustrissimo. But the point was, I was asking Tatang the correct questions. Well, what do you mean it's not just Pluma? You know?
Yeah.
Tupper Ricketts taught me a Pluma drill, how to train Pluma. And there's 3 moves. And one's a Pluma, one's an Estrella or inside block, and one's a parry. Well, why is it a Pluma drill? You could call it an Estrella drill or a parry drill. I mean, you're only doing it one time, right? The drill didn't make sense, right, to call it a Pluma drill.
I know.
Because it's only one out of 3 movements.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen it through Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was with Tatang, I'd ask very specific questions, and especially that one day where he was so disappointed in me for not getting the training, you know, and then he explained to me, well, duh, your feet were together. He didn't say duh.
Yeah.
Doy, you know, my feet were together. Then my right foot was forward. The next time my left foot was forward, and that all changed the range. And that's when I started learning every technique has a range, and if it's in more than one range, you need a new footwork. And that became one of the 7 rules of range footwork and technique that we use in integrated eskrima as a template not to violate.
Okay.
And there's plenty of one-off techniques. So Illustrissimo has a lot. Cabalis, they have all these one-off techniques that only work against one angle, right? But for me, if it only works against one angle, it's not sufficient to be part of the training. It's not part of that 80% rule. Like, you need a technique like recta can beat everything, you know.
Right, yeah.
It's like Freiley can beat 7 angles, you know. Like, you need something that has a lot of utility.
You know, I mean, with Cabalis, right, if you're not against other than low shots, I mean, what are you using it, you know?
Right. So the one-off things, I call them like, oh, shit techniques. It's like you have it in your bag, but hopefully you don't need it. Like, you're out of food, but there's a can of Spam in the basement somewhere, you know. So I did that with integrated eskrima, cardboarding out for 3 years, and then from there having another curriculum that I was working through for myself, and then realizing it's still too much to remember. Oh, every time he blocks like that, I got to put my left leg forward. You can't think like that. It's too fast. So then I started really looking at, okay. And I came up with this idea of modes, and I write about it in the Mastering Eskrima Disarms book. And it gives examples of how all the FMA techniques, not the empty hand, the weapon techniques, are broken down into 4 modes. So I'll start with 4. 4 is all the techniques that block and check and block and, you know, the hand and the weapon are on the weapon at the same time, right?
Okay.
So roof block, umbrella block, inside block, outside block, punch block or drop block, whatever you call it, you know, all those types of blocks, right? The third one is techniques that deflect. So your Pluma, your recta, your Freilays, you know, it's stick on stick, deflect and strike. But there's no hand contact, right? The third one is hand and stick work together, but separately, simultaneously, but separate. So your angle 1 comes in, I parry and I hit you, or I parry and I hit you. Right, or I do a pass and then I hit. So it's like a 2 movement or a 1.5 beat movement, right?
Okay.
So the hand is doing the blocking, so to speak, deflecting, and the weapon is hitting. So now we've gone from a 1-2-3 technique, or in Serrata 1-2, right, to a 1.5 or 1-2-3 for the florete or the rectas, right, to a 1.5 or 1 for Illustrissimo. But you're still utilizing 2 hands. And then his whack-a-mole on me, which is recta, direct hit from any angle without blocking. And to do that, you have to control range and gait and time. 3 things. So I say, okay, angle 1 is the most deadly effective and direct. Angle 2 is also you hit on the first beat, but it requires your second hand coordination. Angle 3, it takes 1.5 to 2 beats. Angle 4, 2 to 3 beats to hit somebody, and both hands are tied up, not good. Those are my oh shit techniques. Most FMA is mode 4.
Nice.
That's why Tatang, who's mostly mode 1 and 2, could defeat most of the other guys.
Right, because he's thinking recta right the bat. He's not even thinking about blocking.
Yeah, he's just like direct hit or check and hit at the same time.
Absolutely, right.
Or deflect and hit. and none of this kind of tying up and opening.
Yeah, right. Like, right. Why are you tying up when you can
Right.
just go? Right. Gotcha.
So it integrated Eskrima. The mode 4s are taught last, then the 3s, then the 2, then the 1s. And if we do the flow sparring, like a flow sparring drill, for example, we use it as a lesson, not as sparring. And the lesson is, all right, you flow spar and do whatever you're doing. And when I see you do an angle 4, I'm going to end the flow sparring by countering with a 3, 2, or a 1 of any technique of my choice or defense of my choice. And almost every time it stops the person in their track. And then next time we're doing it, when he does like maybe he'll do a deflection and a hit, like a fry lay or a rect or whatever. Then you say, okay, if he's that's a 3, you have to defend with a 2 or 1, something higher, right? And you have to find the time to do it. And you get the time because the other guy's training you, not trying to beat you.
Yeah, right? Okay.
He's your training partner. And then we do it where he does a 2. He's parrying and hitting you at the same time. And the only way to get out of that is to move your range or your gate and to do a direct strike with leak and flow, right? And it takes a while to get it. It's super hard. But then once you get it and your eyes get it and you have the spatial relation and it's in your muscle memory, you never have to do that other stuff anymore. Because as soon as the guy goes to get, you're like, boom, you're off.
Yeah, you're already thinking.
You're doing what Tatan did to me in 93 or, whatever it was, right? And now I got to the essence of that and I have the platform to train it. Where that's something that you'd have to just Jedi out on for 30 years of experience to get, not by doing drills, but by experience. And he got it from fighting experience, because his style doesn't look like his uncle, Guillermo Tinga.
No, I heard of his experience.
Yeah, it's all experience, but now the experience can be condensed to a training platform. And integrated Eskrima is not a new style of FMA. It's their techniques. It's the platform of learning it. So the content is the same, right? The content of the art, but the context of how it's taught and seen is different. And that's the difference. It's this training and teaching method of understanding the art from the inside, not a new system of techniques and applications, which you should be able to create endlessly on your own anyway, after some years of training.
All right, so questions here. Okay. So let's I tell you, we can do these quick. Types to get exposed to. Okay, and you already kind of answered. It's the type, the curriculum the students get exposed to. You got 7 major components.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you separate blade and stick methodology? Question from Julius.
Okay, Julius, we talked about this earlier. I don't know if you were on. It's been a long talk. And the question was given before we talked, but I train everything from the blade perspective because you can level down your technique. You can't level it up because of the stress and the endorphins and the tunnel vision in a fight. So if you're always practicing as if you have a blade, your technique is super effective anyway, right? You won't slice his arm off, but you'll smash and you'll obliterate, his wrist and his elbow and his ribs and his jaw, right? So if somebody attacks you on the street with a machete or a knife, you're not going to accidentally grab it, or try and block it like this, where it's going to slide down and cut off your arm, right? But if you only train with stick and you pretend it's a sword, but you're like, okay, we're sword thing, and then you throw in stick techniques and disarms and grapples. I was at seminars with friends, contemporaries of mine who are teaching sword disarms around the neck and thing and do this, and the blade's on the guy's own arm. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? And like, why do you need to neck lock and choke him with the blade? You can just kill him. Like, you're losing the plot. The plot is to end the encounter as fast as possible and go get a milkshake. Me, I've had too many, as you can see. But so I always train with blade orientation. Binias taught me that. Illustrissimo, Tatan reinforced it. Right? It always was blade orientation, always. Bong Abner trains that way, blade orientation.
I can tell you that much for sure.
He's great at it, Romy Makabagal is always blade orientation, That's the best way because you can still do it with a stick, but you don't fall into the problem of doing stick techniques with certain disarms where you can wrap the stick and disarm.
That's just
arm locks, and you can't do that with the blade. So better to train higher and you can level down, but it's real hard to be down and level up in the middle of an encounter.
Well said. All right, I got, okay, from Steve Brody. Mark Wiley is a great
Steve Brody.
Ask him how he would train someone if they only had a month to train with him before an actual stick fight or knife fight.
I would say call 1-800-GRODY.
His cognitive knife program.
Yes, cognitive knife movements and not cognitive dissonance. And Steve Grody is your master. If we only had a month or even a week, it's okay, because we would stick on the mode 1 techniques, and the master of all techniques is recta. I have a saying, it's like a Chinese proverb that I made up for Filipino. I don't know, I'm American. That recta beats all under heaven. Or angle 1 beats all. No matter what technique somebody throws, the recta can defeat it, both as a deflection, as a direct strike, and as a finishing blow. So I would only teach them, actually, Tupa Ricketts' favorite combination is recta patapias, or angle 12, angle 1. Tatang did it a lot. He called it pani piece if he did it quickly in the middle with the sword. Recta patapias if it was more long. And I would teach lutang and alis footwork, and that's it. And just train it against all the angles, and then with the pressure, and then with the gear of somebody's like really aggressive.
Yeah, really come in.
That's all you need. Honestly, you don't need any of the backhand strikes really to finish the encounter. You don't need the upward strikes. I might teach the Saboy or Aldabis or something, but such limited time, especially if they don't have training. Anybody could get these combination and a one range change and a gate change, and get it against all the angles, and then different hands, and then with the pressure coming. And I think really for FMA, you don't need a lot. For real fighting, you don't need a lot. A lot of this is our hobby and our life study.
Yeah. Got something from Richard. Can he explain his nucleus drill and how it builds students' skills?
One more time, what? Sorry, I was reading somebody's.
No. I'm sorry. So Richard is asking, can he explain his nucleus drill and how it builds student skills?
Yes. So the nucleus drill, okay. Tai Chi has their push hands drill, right? It's like their main drill. Wing Chun has Chi Sao. It's like their main drill, right? FMA in the West has Hubud. It's their main empty hand drill. Right?
Hubud.
Hubud. Yeah, non-existent in the Philippines until 1999.
What do you mean?
Anyway, so the nucleus drill is a method of training the range, gate, footwork, and strike, right? Method. Those are the 4 main things, okay? Against the attacker coming in, starting not moving, like going 1 to 5 or 1 to 12. And then when they get that, then they can step in, they can turn the attacker. And the defender has to adjust his range and gate, right? And then the attacker has 2 sticks, and it's 1 by 1, and then it's quicker, and then it's weaving, and the defender has to, under the gun with only 1 stick, now apply the range and gate, range control, gate control, time control, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3 defenses in that. Then after they learn those techniques against 1 to 5, all 4 modes against 1 to 5 techniques, angles 1 to 5 techniques, we start double sticks and disarming and different things. So then they have to apply those exactly into all of those other techniques in the same drill. Okay. But then the drill progresses because then they have to counter the counter. But we only stop. Angel Cabalis taught me an important lesson there. He had his box pattern, and he has block and block, right? And then he has something called picking, or like faking techniques that are pretty quick. And then he has what's called reversing, which is countering the fake, and then reverse, which is countering the counter of the fake, right? And I said, Angel, Manong, is there a reverse? He said, no, somebody dead already. Like, you can't go on in the drill forever.
Yeah.
A lock flow that goes past 3 moves, nobody's going to let you do it, right? You can't do with lock flow unless you're just like having fun with somebody who's not resisting or whatever, right? Yeah. You need to. So I can do a technique, you can counter, I can reverse your counter, then you can win or lose. But after that, someone's got
somebody's.
Yeah. So the nucleus drill takes everything from angle 2 that we have, plugs it in with everything from angle 1 with the range, gate, and time change. Done. Angle 3, integrate in. This is the integrated eskrima, right? Integrated in angle 4, angle 5, then new techniques, double stick. Back, integrate them with each of those things that we learned with all the recta, flale, floretes, etc. Then stick and dagger, then empty hand, then one stick, and you can check, lock, disarm, and then he can counter, and then how do you get out and can still control. So it's this nucleus that keeps expanding and turning, but all the material has to integrate on top of each other, or you never can stack your building to a skyscraper. You have width of knowledge, but no depth of knowledge.
No depth.
No depth in the physical application.
I can definitely appreciate. Okay, I definitely appreciate the depth. Yeah. Okay. And we got from Jason Ward.
Yes, you can use it for boxing and for Aikido and karate because it's a concept. You can apply it over. Yeah.
All right. And this is from Jason. He's got a few. I'm just seeing, though, you might have perhaps maybe answered them already. You kind of already answered the gates and the range. Your research. Okay. And how would you describe the different, the eskrima within the different regions?
Well, okay. So again, we get back to the point of, I couldn't do the martial culture book like Don Drager's Indonesian fighting arts book because the regions aren't self-contained. Katan was from Cebu, but he worked in Manila, right? And then, there's just so much travel for work and for family that but we could say generally from Pampanga comes the Cinco Terro, or the 5 striking methods. I studied the Pampangueño style with, they have the Sinawali, from Onofre Escorpizo, and it was 5 strikes, 5 counters, 5 blocks, 5 disarms. It's just Cinco Terro, right? From northern Luzon, Ilocos, we have the Cabarawan, which is a long pole and a shield, which could be spear and shield from the old days. And then you have a long pole, short pole, but they don't use the 24, 32-inch sticks. It's, up to here and then, up to here or here. Different style completely. If anyone has the chance to just train with him or one of his students, Estelilia, it's really something different. I guess not just, but I published his book on the Cabarawan at Tamoli Media.
Yeah.
Should check it out. I started working on that with him in 1996, and he just finished it. Life's work. Sam Buet too. He kept working on his book again and again and again, and then just published it, and then they passed away. So get the knowledge now. Cebu is a big hotbed, the Visayas of eskrima. And there you have single stick and stick and dagger. You don't have a lot of double stick. You don't have a lot of long stick. It's a lot of medium range, medium to close, Angel Cabalis and Balintoa, Saavedra style, Dos Iparas. They have some double sticks and a lot of more broad different things. But they weren't a single style. It was 12 guys, all the different family members coming in with different things. And then in Bacolod, you have, a whole different group of guys teaching where there's emphasis on like heavier sticks and disarming and locking a lot. And some of those guys were training the military quite often. So Binias taught the military, Gahe taught the military, Tortal taught the military. It's like a different focus, Down in Mindanao, the Arnis groups are just basically Cebuano groups that relocated. So it's
I was going to say, right, yeah. Okay.
Right. But the Silat is separate, but Silat's not FMA, right? It's Malaysian martial arts. So, But nowadays, everything is homogenizing because of YouTube. So it's hard to say, hard to say today, but traditionally, I would say that's what it was.
No. Okay, all right. And that was it. So I just, we are at 2 hours. This is by far my longest interview, 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Do I have time to answer a question from Dan Kukitz?
Sure. No, sure. Go ahead.
This one's it's a good question. He's asking about five answer fist kung fu and integrated eskrima, and are they? I can't read all, but good for each other, whatever. And I'll tell you this: the five answer fist kung fu is a rare style of kung fu in the West. It's very popular in South China and Fujian, but the style is based on developing a power engine inside your body by tilting the pelvis, drooping the shoulders, expanding the shoulders, raising up and down, and creating this power energy that we don't have in FMA at all. And what FMA has is this spontaneity of movement that is not at all found in Kung Fu. Yeah. So the power base of integrated eskrima for generating power in the body for the strikes and for the checking that power base is developed through Gocho Kung Fu, the five ancestor fists, right? But that power base, I express it through eskrima. So I'm not teaching Kung Fu to get it. There's no Kung Fu in the class in the style, but the method of how do I strike and how do I knit the different parts of the body together and expand and contract is biomechanical genius from this Kung Fu style. And it makes the eskrima that we teach extremely powerful and rooted and hard to push you over or be pulled off. And in the Kung Fu, what I have is, because it's very regimented and two-person forms and all that tradition, I haven't done the same thing with that as I've done with eskrima, but I'm able to flow more with the techniques and do stuff with it because of all that eskrima training. And Elric Jundis will tell you, he came to Master Alex's house when I was there to see me one time, Alex Ko. A lot of the Bakbakan and Illustrissimo guys trains in the five ancestor fist. Diego, Ray Galang, all Duran Sordo, all those guys of that generation, Miguel Zubiri, they all trained with Alex Ko or Angwakun, his training brother, because Tupper was a student of Alex's. Kung Fu. Tupper and Alex grew up together from middle school and high school.
Oh, okay.
So they were always training together their whole life. They were best friends, So all those Bakbakan guys, and a lot of the Illustrissimo guys of above my generation, Tony and Ray and Yuli Roma were there before me, by about 15 years, 10 years, something. But from our generation-ish to the beginning of the next generation, and then it stopped because those guys didn't really take it forward because it's a lot, they were teaching the forms, but some like Tony didn't teach the forms, but Tom D studied Gocho for a while, with Alex directly in Alex's teachers club. So that connection is there. And the power base is one of the other things, the expression of power and how do we generate that in the body. It's not just swinging the sticks and swiveling the legs and all kinds of stuff that's there that's quite deep. And that's all part of the training. When we're striking, we're doing it with a body mechanic that is powerful.
No, I've been exposed to a little bit through the Ricketts sanction. Yeah. And one of the things that was verbally mentioned to me was the whole, like you just mentioned, the whole power generation. So I've seen some of it. It was very interesting, and all that. But yeah, this is this is actually wonderful. This cool. Longest interview. We're going on 2.5 hours, but well worth it.
Well, break it up.
No. It's normally I would break this, but you know what? This is good. I'm just gonna tell people just watch it in 2 parts. Whatever. And
get some wings.
yeah. Exactly. So
Angel Cabalis always made me garlic chicken. Because that was his specialty in Stockton. He would make garlic chicken. It's like deep fried chicken with garlic under the skin, garlic sauce. No but in the Philippines, Tupper would take me for chicken bacolod, and with Tatang we'd get lechon manok. So there's always food with FMA and always food in Kung Fu. You go for Chinese food after. That's to get fat, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. Definitely have to incorporate the food and
so get some food, and then you can watch and listen and throw darts at me because of blasphemy and.
Oh my God!
I don't care.
No, I know.
It took me all through my teens and 20s into my mid 30s. It was really nights of no sleep and worry and fear and just attack after attack after attack on the internet. by a bunch of D-bags who now come out like, oh, look, you move so good and this and this. And it's like, you know, are you going to apologize? I mean, publicly to your guys and just say, hey, man, you know, or if not, just leave me alone, you know.
Yeah, right. No, I'm
At
telling
this
you.
point, I'm just like, you know, I told the one guy who was dogging me for a long time in Stockton, I said, hey, man, it's better to create than hate, right? So, and he said, well, it's hard to create when people are holding me responsible for the bullshit in your books. And I said, okay, they could be bullshit. Let's pretend they're bullshit. It's got nothing to do with you. So don't take responsibility for my work.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to answer for me. Just like, I don't know, the dude's crazy and blow it off and go on with your day. But to feel like you have to be responsible for correcting my record, put a burden on you for 2 decades, and therefore you have to shit on me for 2 decades. It's like, man, I'm not that important. You know, I'm just a guy doing his thing, you know, who happened to be at the right place at the right time in the right circumstance. And I wasn't promoting myself. I was doing it to help all these masters and uplift the art, you know. And it was
it's not like you made millions freaking doing it. It's like, I tell you, this community is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Like I was telling you, like before we went live, it's exhausting. It's like, you know, like, yeah, I'm making, you know, like donating my time here and all that. Yeah. I'm just
time away from family and kids and,
you know what I mean? Work. Yeah. And I never get the dirty looks from my wife either when I'm doing 2 shows. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm telling you. And then one day I'm going to be like, you know what? Because I know you use profanity, but it's gonna be like, goodbye. You know what I mean? This community will burn you out. You know, it'll burn you out.
Yeah. Elric Jundis, I did mention about Alex Coe a minute ago when I mentioned your name. Thank you, brother. Okay.
But
thank you, Dean. I really appreciate
I appreciate you doing it.
Such a fun time.
And I just have one more question, Jim. Sure. If there's a question here that I didn't see, I didn't get to, would it be okay for folks to message you directly?
Sure.
Okay.
You can just friend me on Facebook. You can check out integratedeskrima.com. It has information on the system, the overview, the teachers, and a link for the training, online training thing, which is like 100 videos with PDFs to go and methods of training and how to train. And then there's an online group for that where you can put up your videos for me to correct and meet the other students. So that's all there. The books are on Amazon or tambolimedia.com. And any questions you have, just, you know, feel free to ask or tell Dean, and in a couple of months we'll do another set of questions.
I would love
I'm always happy to talk. You know,
no, it'd be my honor to have you back. I would love to. Consider it done. So, folks, you heard it. If I didn't get to a question or I missed it, by all means, directly message GM here. So, but great. So I definitely want to stay in touch with you. I appreciate you coming on, and I hope we didn't take too much of your time away from the family.
They're all asleep.
Okay.
I said I'd be an hour, but it was Filipino time. You know, so.
Oh, that's right. So you're safe now, right? So because it's Filipino time.
It's Filipino time. You know, I had a hard time with that when I first got to the Philippines, because Filipino times mean if we're meeting at 9, you leave the house at 9. You know? And I'm sitting there waiting for an hour to see traffic, and then it took a while to get. And then I married a Filipina, and Filipino time really aggravated my parents when we're supposed to be there.
Ooh,
you know, but then we got divorced 9 or 10 years later, and now I'm like, Filipino time is just when I'm late. Thank you, Dean. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And I believe me, you will be back on. I can assure you, and I appreciate you doing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, sir.
Appreciate it.
You take care of yourself.
Thanks to everyone.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Folks, here, don't leave yet. I want you guys to see this. Here's 2 videos I highly recommend you check out. So, all right, watch this one here. This is on YouTube. This is when he was interviewed regarding his system. It's about over 2 hours. Highly recommend you check it out. You can find this on YouTube. Just type in Mark Wiley. I forget the source who's interviewing, but again, check this out. All right, one more. And this is where he's working with Maestro, Bong Amanir. This is where he's explaining the gates and ranges It's about 8 minutes long. Absolutely fascinating. This is something you should definitely watch. How he does the same thing off an angle one, where he'll use Talamboa and another different the V, but absolutely amazing. I mean, amazing. Definitely check this one out. This again, and Maestro Bong's in it too. Yeah, a must see on this one. The way he articulates it within the gates, I just thought was incredibly done well. So again, both are on YouTube. All you gotta do is just type in Mark Wiley FMA, and you can find them both. All right. And lastly, we have a raffle that is coming up this Sunday for GM Renee's organization, and I'm just waiting for some pictures. Paulo's gonna be on it, or as part of it, I should say. And he's auctioned off a few things that he received, some incredible things, but that'll be Sunday. As soon as I get the pictures, we'll get that going. Tomorrow night, you got three female guests, Trisha, Whitney, and Tuhan Arlene. We're going to be discussing women's self-defense. For the women who can't dedicate enough time to training, consistently and all that. So what could we do for them? So that's tomorrow night, a little later than normal, 9:15 Eastern Standard Time. So again, just to accommodate all of them. So again, a little later than normal. But I want to thank everybody who watched, commented, submitted questions. Again, if I didn't get to your question, by all means, you heard it from GM, just message him directly, and he'll be more than happy to answer you. If you haven't already, hit like and subscribe to FMA Discussion on YouTube. All right, folks, thank you, and see you tomorrow night.